safely in the provincial general election. In advance, by mail, or on Election Day, October 24th.
Ready to make your mark? If you're 16 or 17, a resident of BC and a Canadian citizen, then you can sign up for the list of future voters. You'll be automatically registered to vote when you turn 18. Visit elections.bc.ca/futurevoters to learn more.
I vote by mail.
I vote by mail.
Voting by mail is an option for all voters in the provincial election. Visit votebymail.elections.bc.ca to request your package.
I vote.
Here's how to complete your vote by mail package for the 2020 provincial election. When you receive your package, open it and remove what's inside. If you need to register to vote or update your voter information, you'll need to provide copies of acceptable ID. Follow the instructions on the Vote by Mail ID requirement sheet. If your package does not have the Vote by Mail ID requirement sheet, that means your registration is up to date and you do not need to provide copies of ID. You can mark your ballot with a pencil or a pen. If you requested your package before candidate nominations closed, you will have a write-in ballot. A full list of candidates is now available at elections.bc.ca/candidates. To mark your write-in ballot, first remember you are voting for your local MLA. Then write the name of the party or candidate of your choice clearly in the space provided. Make sure you write the name of a party or candidate running in your electoral district, or your vote will not be counted. A vote for a party leader will not be counted unless they are a candidate in your electoral district. You can find your electoral district in the bottom right-hand corner of the certification envelope included with your package. Remember that the complete list of candidates that you will need to mark your write-in ballot is available online at elections.bc.ca/candidates, or by calling 1-800-661-8683. If you requested your vote by mail package after candidate nominations closed, you will have an ordinary ballot. To vote, mark an X or a check next to your choice. Do not write anything else on your ballot, or your vote may not be counted. After marking your ballot, refold it and put it in Secrecy Sleeve A. Place Secrecy Sleeve A with your ballot in it into Certification Envelope B. Make sure Certification Envelope B has your name on it, and seal it. No one else can use your certification envelope. Sign your certification envelope and provide your birth date in the spaces provided. The first 2 digits of your year of birth will be pre-filled based on when you were born. You must provide your signature and birth date, or your ballot will not be counted. If someone helps you, they must write their name in the space provided. If you make a mistake on either the ballot or the certification envelope, you can ask for a replacement voting package by calling Elections BC at 1-800-661-8683, or you can go online to request another package. When the sealed certification envelope is complete, put it inside Return Envelope C. Seal the return envelope. To return your package to Elections BC, you can mail the postage-paid return envelope or bring it into any in-person drop-off location. Find a list of in-person drop-off locations at elections.bc.ca. Elections BC must receive your completed package by 8 p.m. Pacific Time on October 24th. So please put it in the mail by October 17th or return it in person well before the deadline.
Good evening, and welcome to the 2020 Provincial All Candidates Debate for the Chilliwack Riding. I'm William Clausen for the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce, and I'll be your host for this evening. Thank you for joining us. We are streaming live from the Co-Work Chilliwack studio, and speaking of that, I cannot express enough gratitude and appreciation for Tim McAlpine of Co-Work Chilliwack and Robbie Snooks of For the Win Media, both who are diligently working behind the scenes and countless hours before this to bring this event to you. Thank you. This being my first virtual event of this magnitude, I can assure you that all the mistakes that we may have or the issues are on me, because both Tim and Robbie are amazing people and are the reason we can bring this event to you. This event is brought to you by Kinetic Signs, For the Win Media, Co-Work Chilliwack Studio, and our primary sponsors are the Chilliwack Healthier Communities and the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank both of their boards, their staff, led by Leanna Kemp at the Chamber and Sabine Mendez at the CHC. Thank you for everything you did to put this together and this evening. Both the CHC, the Chilliwack Healthier Community, and the Chamber are outstanding member-driven organizations that are leading the charge in probably the two most important fronts, the social services nonprofit sector and the economy. It is impossible to separate these two areas. A healthy community can only exist when both our economy is vibrant and we have an optimal social, emotional, and mental health. That is a healthy community. So in line with that, the Chamber and the CHC teamed up to bring you this critical debate. The format of tonight's debate will consist of 9 rounds. There will be an intro where each candidate will introduce themselves for 1 minute. There will be 7 questions and closing remarks. For this debate, we have 6 candidates, but only 4 of them will be randomly chosen to answer each of the questions. After the 4 random chosen have answered their questions, the first 2 people, by my judgment, to the best of my ability, with their rebuttal card up, may either also answer the question or respond or add to their previous answer. These 2 cards are only 2 cards for the entire evening. However, if each candidate has these rebuttal cards left over at the end of the evening, they may add 1 minute to their closing remarks. That brings me to the questions. The questions that I'll be asking have not yet been entirely determined, because this is where you, as my live audience, come in. What I want you to do now is, from any online device, or maybe you've already done this, but from any online device, go to slido.com or sli.do, open up a web browser, open up sli.do or slido.com, and our event code for tonight is CHWK Debate. So that's CHWK Debate. Once you get into the Slido event, choose the Chilliwack Riding Room. That's this debate. At 7:15, we'll be going live with the Chilliwack-Kent Riding, but this is the Chilliwack Riding Room if you want to engage in this debate right now. Once you get into that room, you can either do one of 2 things. Look through the questions that already exist and vote up with the thumbs up symbol. Vote up, click on the question, and make sure that that it tells me that you want this question asked. And the question with the most votes is the next question I'm going to ask the candidates. If the question you are looking for is not there and you would like to ask it, type it into the box at the top and hit submit. Now, those questions will be moderated for legitimacy, accuracy, just to make sure they're correct. And also, if there's questions that are already on the forum, we won't have them repeated just to keep it clean. So again, it's slido.com and the event code is CHWK Debate. So without further ado, because we only have an hour and 15 minutes, we'll roll right into the debate and give each candidate 1 minute to introduce themselves. So first off, we have Josue Anderson. You have 1 minute.
Hello? Is my mic on? Can I, okay. So, my name is Josue Anderson. Hose, like we're getting hosed by the government. And way, like we need a new way forward. He, him pronouns have always worked just fine for me. And I am thankful to speak to you from unceded Stolo territory. Our political system is either completely disinterested or incapable of addressing the 3 most important issues in BC to me: wealth inequality, climate change, and Indigenous sovereignty. As an independent, I can't hide behind party lines. The only people I answer to are the people of Chilliwack. And if elected, I would have the power to vote for any bill, regardless of who is in power, all the while advocating for a distinctly Chilliwack perspective. The coronavirus has only acted to accelerate the greatest transfer of wealth within British Columbia, and I believe that the wealth tax that I advocate for is the best tool to address this.
Thank you, Josue. And up next, we have Andrew Coombs. You have 1 minute.
Hi, my name is Andrew Coombs. I'm representing the... First off, I'd like to thank everybody for putting their name forward. It's a big deal to do this. You get a lot of flack, as I've noticed, for just putting your name forward. So thank every single one of you guys for stepping up. It's a big deal. I moved to Chilliwack in 2006 from small resource town in northwestern Ontario. When I first got here, I coached the Chilliwack Giants for about 3 years. It's the most fun I ever had. Then I started working in the trades, got my electrician's ticket, and worked all across this beautiful country. I believe that a libertarian is what Chilliwack needs. We are extremely independent-minded people. Our party does not have where we have to vote along party lines. We can vote with our conscience 100% of the time, and I will put Chilliwack before party just because that's what I've always done.
Thank you, Andrew. And up next, we have Tim Cooper. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Yes, I have no pre-prepared speech, so my apologies for that. I've been in Chilliwack for 27 years. I teach physics at the university. I was new to politics 3 weeks ago. I wasn't running for this election, and I wasn't even a member of the Green Party. But I have a reputation in the community for caring about the environment. I've given over 180 presentations on climate change in the Valley and in Vancouver. And so the Green Party asked me to run. So if I'm a little rough around the edges, I do apologize for that. I still have a lot to learn, and I'm learning fast. So I would appreciate your support on Elections Day. The Green Party label speaks for itself. Some people don't realize, though, that the Green Party, it's a big tent party. Each Green candidate is a little bit different. We don't whip our candidates, so some of what you're hearing is from me, some of it is just boilerplate from the Green Party, a little bit of each. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And Dan Coulter, you have 1 minute.
I'd first like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional unceded territory of the Stalo people, in particular that of the Puyallup and Chilliwack tribes. I'm privileged to be able to work, play, and live here. My name is Dan Coulter, and I'm your proud BC NDP candidate here in Chilliwack. I'd like to thank the Chamber and Chilliwack Healthier Communities for hosting this debate. For the last 2 years, I've been chair of the Chilliwack's Board of Education and a trustee since 2013. I've also had the pleasure of serving my community as a volunteer and member of many communities, including as co-chair of the Chilliwack Healthier Communities. I'm proud to be part of John Horgan's team. You're being asked who you'd like to lead through this pandemic. Andrew Wilkinson and the BC Liberals would like to give their wealthy friends all sorts of tax breaks that would result in more fees and loss of services for the rest of us. The BC NDP is going to focus on the challenges that we all face, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to let you know more about it.
Thank you, Dan. And up next, we have Diane Jansen. You have 1 minute.
Hello, I'm Diane Jansen. I'm representing the BC Conservatives, and I wanted to thank the Chamber and CHC for hosting this event and for everybody who is running for office. I'm passionate about Chilliwack. I've spent the last 20 years working hard as a city councillor, as a school trustee, and with Chilliwack Community Services. And one thing we really excel at here in Chilliwack is getting things together and working hard to get them done. And that's why I'm here. And I'm running for only one reason, and that is to give Chilliwack great representation in Victoria. Some of the issues I want to work on are things such as homelessness, addiction, Highway number 1, and making sure that we manage the $52 billion that you give us as taxpayers in a responsible way. And working together, we can really get this thing done here in Chilliwack, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. And now over to John Martin, who's joining us via Zoom. John, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. And I too would like to acknowledge we are on the traditional Stalo territory, and a huge thank you to the Chamber and to CHC for putting this event on. And we're heading into a time of period that is unprecedented for almost all of us. Certainly it is for me. We're living in the equivalent of a wartime economy. And the government that leads us through this pandemic and to the years beyond is going to have to be so passionate about British Columbia and about the people of British Columbia and the businesses in British Columbia, our nonprofits. How are they going to recover? If we get a second wave, we know that half of the businesses will very likely never reopen again. So I'm happy to be part of the BC Liberal team that wants to restore confidence and rebuild BC and help to navigate the economy, this province through the most troubling times any of us have ever gone through. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And I also like to thank all of my colleagues in democracy for putting their name forward.
Thank you, John, for the intros, and to all the candidates for putting your names forward and for giving us a little bit of an introduction to yourself. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the 6 or the 7 rounds of questions. And again, just for all of you tuning in, remember to go to slido.com, that's slido.com, or on your web browser, go to sli.do. That's sli.do, and your event code is CHWK debate. And make sure you choose the Chilliwack room. I'm definitely getting votes on questions. We're getting questions rolling in. And without mentioning that again, we will go into the first question. And we have randomly chosen 4 of the 6 candidates to answer this one question, and after those 4, you may put up a rebuttal card if you haven't yet answered it, or if you have answered it, you can also use one of your rebuttal cards. So for the first question, we're going to lead off with Tim Cooper. How will you ensure Chilliwack gets the affordable housing it so desperately needs? So Tim Cooper, how will you ensure that Chilliwack gets the affordable housing it so desperately needs? You have 1.5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. The word ensure is a dangerous one because it's very difficult to promise something with absolute certainty. The Green Party's view on housing affordability is that, of course, it affects primarily people who are lower income and have less money in the bank. So that usually means renters. And one of the Green Party policies is to give renters a break in much the same way that older people like me who own their own houses, we get the homeowner's allowance on income tax. So one of the Green Party policies, which I think will make a difference, is reducing rents, either through direct grants of a renter grant to the landlord, or giving it to the renter and they can use it to pay the rent at some point. That's the primary way. The other way is, of course, to try to balance supply and demand. Housing gets affordable when there's too few houses being sought after by too many people. It's hard to get people to stop coming to Chilliwack because it's such a lovely place to be. So we really need to try to make it easier to build houses. We can't build on the agricultural land reserve. So unfortunately, if we choose to go for affordable housing, we're going to have to open up more areas for development up in the mountains, possibly around Ryder Lake, wherever we can.
Thank you, Tim. And next up for the same question, Diane Jansen.
I have some experience in this area running the Village, which is a facility for youth and for individuals with mental health challenges. And what we have to do is work together with the City of Chilliwack, BC Housing, and to do much better with CMHC in terms of getting housing stock here. And I think that's a number one job for MLAs, is to make sure that we advocate to get things done. I do need to remind everybody that the NDP only met about 3% of what they promised, and we really do need to include and increase the stock of affordable housing.
Thank you, Diane. And up for the same question, how will you ensure that Chilliwack gets the affordable housing it so desperately needs, is Josue Anderson. You have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, William. So on my website, josueanderson.ca, I have a comprehensive policy regarding housing. I think that there are 2 very different issues that we need to address, if not 3 very different issues we need to address when it comes to housing in British Columbia. First and foremost, I believe housing is a human right, and I believe that we need to work hard to house everyone in British Columbia. I think that public housing is certainly one venue that we need to do to make sure that there is no one living on the streets unsheltered. I think that that is a fundamental right that we need to work harder on here in BC. But the second level is regarding the working class. If you have a stable job, you still cannot afford to own your own home. You are fundamentally forced to rent in British Columbia because of the housing market. I propose a system where there should be a government option to provide affordable housing, primarily seen as a human right and secondarily seen as an investment opportunity that is not quite as lucrative as free market investments. Third, I think a wealth tax actually creates more supply when the hyper wealthy in our province can't just sit on our houses as assets, perpetually gaining more and more wealth without the need to have anyone inside of those houses or without the need to ever actually sell those houses. The speculation tax was a good start, but fundamentally misses the point of how the hyper wealthy operate and use cash flow assets. When you tax the hyper wealthy, they're more likely to sell those assets and free up market supply. As a small business owner and as an economic enthusiast, my platform works and models around the world have already implemented them.
Thank you, Josue. And last for this question is John Martin.
Thank you very much. So out of a promised 114,000 affordable homes, the NDP have only opened a little under 3,000 of those units. And at this rate, it's going to take 100 years for them to reach their housing market. The BC Liberals want to implement the most comprehensive housing strategy in North America. And there's some of the ways to do this: establish an incentive fund for municipalities and housing policies that enable demonstrable increases in the construction and supply of new housing. Supply is key here. And implementing tax and permitting changes to boost housing supply. This would include rental market housing, increasing choice and improving affordability for British Columbians, and also working with municipalities to review the current property tax structure to incent affordable housing development, prevent speculation, and drive affordable rental housing. Right now, under NDP policy, who would want to get into the rental apartment business? It's been pushed aside. We can also support zoning reforms. We can ensure no net loss of rental units in real estate development projects. We can develop tax relief measures to help people that have been hurt by COVID, economic impacts. What about split assessments for the commercially rented portion of buildings through a new commercial property subclass?
Thank you, John. That's your minute.
What about a residential property subclass for rental housing of 3 or more units?
Thank you, John. Is there anybody who wants to rebut that? So Dan Coulter, just one moment here. Dan Coulter, you have 1 minute.
There's no question that rental prices are too high, and it mostly affects our young people, and we don't want young people moving away out of our province. The BC Liberals, they ignored speculation and allowed homes to increase by over $600,000 in the last 3 years before the BC NDP government. They also ignored speculation and allowed rampant speculation that increased the prices of homes. They opposed the speculation tax, which the BC NDP instituted, and that freed up 11,000 condos for young people to rent. The BC NDP has a comprehensive plan, is making gains, but there's more to do, and we've got to keep BC moving forward.
Thank you, Dan. So that's how the rebuttal cards work. Is there anybody else who wants to use a rebuttal card in this round? Or otherwise, we'll go to the next round. Okay, so for round 2, we have, thank you all the viewers who are tuning in. Definitely we're getting votes. Our next question on the slate is, this is for, do you support safe injection sites? And do you support a safe supply chain of legal drugs to addicts? Why or why not? So it's a multi-stage question, but I think you get the gist of the question. So for this question, again, randomly generated, first up is Andrew Coombs. You have 1.5 minutes.
Yes, I support safe injection sites. I also support a supply chain of legal drugs, but the BC Libertarian Party would do it a little bit differently. We would partner with not-for-profits to do purity testing, to let everybody know if their drugs are laced with dangerous fentanyl. We need to put municipalities in the lead for this, because the Chilliwack issue is different than a Victoria issue, which is different than a Vancouver issue. We have to give municipalities greater control and greater opportunities to deal with the issues that are out there. have to get away from decriminalization, because decriminalization still criminalizes the solutions. We need to go to straight legalization. BC Libertarians have many ideas, whether it's setting up compassion clubs where addicts can go in and have safer ways of getting off of opioids, to holding the Chinese government accountable for the fact that they are connected to the fentanyl being brought into this province, as you've seen from the global news and CBC, into the money laundering, that those gangs are connected to the Chinese government. So we also need to hold them accountable for the dirty fentanyl that is coming into the province.
Thank you, Andrew. And up next we have on our list is Tim Cooper. Do you support safe injection sites? You have a minute and a half.
Thank you. Yes, I certainly do. I know a young man who, as a young teenager, got involved with the gangs and drugs and started taking drugs. And he's been spending a whole bunch of time going into jail and out of jail. His life's just really messed up. He's got a criminal record. Can he get a job and contribute to society? Not with that criminal record. Whatever we're doing at the moment has clearly not worked for him. I really like the Portugal model. In Portugal, drugs have been totally decriminalized. Some are actually quite legal. We now have legal marijuana here. What this does is it enables drug addicts who are not criminals, they're victims, to come forwards openly, come into centers for safe injection sites, yes, but they also should be supplied with a safe supply of legal drugs to help them transition to a drug-free life if they wish. And hopefully most of them would. So in answer to the question, yes, I very strongly support safe injection sites and a safe supply of legal drugs. I believe that's also the policy of the Green Party of Canada.
Thank you, Tim. And up next we have, for the same question, do you support safe injection sites, Dan Coulter?
I support safe injection sites. I also support a rounder approach to do many different things. The BC Liberals ignored this when this became a crisis back in 2016. The BC NDP has doubled youth beds and continues to increase youth beds. Bonnie Henry has said that there isn't a rounded approach and that safe supply is a way to go, and we're working with her on that issue. Also, we are moving towards decriminalization. We're going to join with the Canadian Association of Police Chiefs, who agrees with us on the decriminalization issue. And, you know, one death is too much. You know, these people are our family, friends, coworkers, neighbors, and just one death is too much, and we need to fight this issue with everything we have.
Thank you, Dan. And up next we have, for the same question, John Martin.
Thank you so much. And there are individuals who are addicted to drugs who are going to be on drugs for the rest of their life. Not everyone is going to be a candidate for recovery, rehabilitation, and treatment. Many are going to try 6, 8, 15 times or more. So we have to accept that there are going to be people that will be in that situation for the rest of their life. And safe injection and a safe supply for them is literally the difference between life and death. So absolutely, I support that, excuse me, for the people that require it. But we can't forget that there's more than just harm reduction for people that are addicted. Addiction is a health issue. In some cases, it's a mental health issue. But we also have to look at treatment. We have to look at prevention. We have to deal with enforcement. We need to increase addiction treatment, recovery programs. We need to ensure those who need help getting off drugs have that clear pathway to treatment when they need it. What they don't need is the NDP's approach of simply warehousing people in tents in parks and playgrounds and providing no services whatsoever. That is a approach that I cannot live with.
Thank you, John. And is there anybody who wants to rebut that or add to? So Diane Jansen, you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. So my central question is, where of the NDP and the BC Liberals been for the last 16 years. So the NDP have presided over the greatest number of opioid deaths in BC history, and the BC Liberals did nothing about the money laundering crisis that drove the opioid crisis. The BC Conservatives believe we need to basically blow up the system. And what we need to do is focus not so much on safe injection sites, but on the full 4 pillars. And that includes prevention and treatment. And just a reminder to everyone as well that the BC Liberals closed our detox centre here a number of years ago. We need particularly adult male treatment beds. And we need to look at the issue in particular at prevention, which is working with youth. Finally, enforcement. And my view personally is that when it comes to prolific drug offenders that are selling drugs, those people need to get hammered, and we need to make sure that they're off our streets.
Thank you, Diane. And is there anybody else who wants to rebut that or add anything? Okay, then we're going to go to round 3. It's a new question, again, for new random candidates to answer this question. And the question is, sorry, just let me get this up here. The next question is going to be, the Chilliwack School District has been severely impacted by decades of underfunding, particularly SD 33. Being one of the most overcrowded districts in BC, how will you, as our MLA, ensure continued approval of capital projects so that infrastructure can catch up with our student population? And first up, we have Josue Anderson.
This is a very personal question for me, as I've spent the entirety of my adult life fundamentally being a debate and speech instructor. Everyone on my wife's side of the family is a public school teacher. I can assure you, I would never do anything that would make my dinner conversations more tense. I fundamentally believe that the NDP have let teachers down. A party dedicated to education and progress cannot be a party that doesn't fund our institutions appropriately for future generations. When you look at the pandemic response of the NDP, you understand that they will always sacrifice our rights for the interest of political gain. I would never have a system where our education systems and a diversity of progressive, new, innovative ideas aren't at the forefront of BC's agenda. I believe that the first people you talk to in terms of how you structure an education system have to be the frontline teachers. I would commit to working with the teachers' unions, the individual teachers on the ground, and everyone in School District 33 who would like to chat with me and come to my office and speak to me on a person-to-person basis. I cannot hide behind party lines. I vote with the will of the people of Chilliwack, and I work with the people of Chilliwack. And I assure you, I would make sure that our school systems and every possible asset would be fully funded and that the teachers' rights and safety come first.
Thank you, Josue. And up next for the same question is Andrew Coombs.
So COVID-19 and the closures of schools offered us an opportunity to try out some new ways for education, whether it was online learning, school pods, smaller school pods, tutoring, or private instruction. They had varying degrees of success, but it was a way for us to realize that we can do education in a new way. For the BC Libertarians, we believe the money should follow the students, and we would take as much decision-making power as possible away from the Ministry of Education and put it directly into the hands of the local school boards, where the parents can have more of a decision-making and policies with their local teachers and teacher unions.
Thank you, Andrew. And up next, we have for the same question, Dan Coulter. You have a minute and a half.
Thank you very much for this question. This question is one of the things that made me run for the BC NDP. In my 7 years as a school trustee, I spent it under 2 different governments, the BC Liberals and the BC NDP, for the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, with the BC NDP government, we've had capital projects fast-tracked here in SD 33. We've had We've had a school that we're going to build. The old UFV campus here is going to become a new high school. We're getting funding for that. We're going to have a addition at GW Graham High School so that we can have more students there. And we're going to have another addition at Vetter Elementary. And these are very important projects to us, increasing space for students. Under the BC Liberals, we ballooned to 100 portables. And I sat with a BC Liberal minister and we told him how many portables we had and that we desperately needed more space and proper space for students to learn in schools and not in portables. And we were stonewalled.
Thank you, Dan. And for the last chosen person for this question is Diane Jansen.
Thanks for that question. So I was privileged to be on the board when we built GW Graham, and the Chilliwack School District grows by about one school a year. So I view that as a key priority in terms of making sure that we have the kind of capital infrastructure that we need in order to meet the needs of all our students. On the larger question of funding, I believe that what we need to do is a thorough review of the $6.2 billion that we spend every year in education and actually make sure that it gets down to the classroom. My view is that we are wasting too much money on administration, and in fact, our school district has grown double in a double rate what it is put into instruction. So it's not just about how much money you get; it's about exactly where you're spending your money.
Thank you, Diane. Is there anybody who would like to rebut that or add anything to that question? No? Okay, so we'll go over to the next question. So if you're just tuning in, just remember to log into Slido, that's sli.do or slido.com and enter the code CHWK debate. It's on, that's CHWK debate is the event code. And you can ask questions. And if you're already on there, make sure you're voting up the questions so we can know which question to ask next. And for the next question we have, it is, while we haven't yet had a full economic recovery, while we haven't yet felt full economic impacts of the pandemic, officials are at all levels are turning towards economic recovery. Does your party have specific plans that address the people most impacted by social issues? How will your party ensure vulnerable populations won't get forgotten as we are into the recovery? So the first person on this question is Tim Cooper.
Here, I'm going to struggle a little bit. As I introduced myself at the beginning, I'm a new candidate for the Green Party, and I'm not yet familiar with all of the policies. The manifesto was released actually this afternoon, and I haven't had a chance to study it in detail. But I do know the values of the Green Party, and the values of the Green Party is really to look after the environment, yes, but also humans. So I would say the Green Party is going to take a lot of time and think carefully about spending money, because even though the Green Party's policy is basically look after the kids by protecting the environment and also balancing the budget, at this time, balancing the budget is just not a good idea. The Green Party recognizes that. So we will be putting up money for the most vulnerable people in society, and exactly the form that it's coming out, as I said, I'm going to have to pass on this one because I haven't managed to get the information that I yet need.
Thank you, Tim. And over to Diane Jansen for the same question. How will your party ensure vulnerable populations are not forgotten during the pandemic and its subsequent recovery?
So the BC Conservatives and I both strongly agree that what we need to do here is to focus on the issue of homelessness. So we have about 300 homeless individuals in Chilliwack, and we need to develop housing for them, but also provide mental health and addiction supports, because those are the two drivers. In fact, homeless individuals here, about 60 or 70% of them struggle with those particular issues. I also want to focus on the issue of affordable housing because that's also a precursor to homelessness. And that involves working very strongly with our city, with BC Housing and with CMHC to get that kind of affordable housing. The BC Conservative government would also drop personal tax rates for low-income individuals to assist them during this pandemic time.
Thank you, Diane. And over to John Martin for the same question.
Well, thank you. And as we've seen in recent years, we've had to revisit our definition of vulnerable populations. We now have people that have full-time jobs and don't have a roof over the head. They're living in their car, or they're living outdoors. So when we address the recovery of COVID, we're going to have a very expansive approach to this. So within 60 days of taking office, a BC Liberal government is going to do a number of things. One is to implement a new economic response plan that creates new jobs, new investments, and help small business hire people, young people looking for their first job, put money back in the pockets of people. One of the ways we're doing that is to eliminate the PST for a full year and launching a comprehensive review of regulatory processes, ensure more timely approvals. We have a strategy to deal with addictions in a multifaceted, wholesome approach that looks at all four pillars of drug, the approach to drugs and addiction. That being, as we've already talked about, treatment, prevention, harm reduction, and enforcement. We're looking at low-income housing. We're looking at different strategies to fast-track the development and the completion of housing. Right now, the process takes far too long. But this is going to be an enormous challenge. Every single administration in the Western world is going to be running big deficits for years to come, and we're going to be one of them.
Thank you, John. And for the final answer on this question is Josue Anderson.
Several responses. First, we need to make sure that the people on the streets that are most vulnerable to this disease are not forced to stay on the streets. Second, many regular working class people, like the majority of the people of Chilliwack, are struggling under the existing tax burden that have been put on them by the NDP. I would firmly advocate for increasing the minimum income tax allowance, much like the Libertarians, to $32,000 a year. This is feasible because of the wealth tax that I am implementing and advocating for on my platform. I know I seem like an idyllic leftist, but I am not. Over the past 6 years, I've accrued a tremendous amount of personal wealth as being fairly understanding of how capitalism works and how small businesses are the economy. We need to make sure that we have an economy that is driven by small businesses and not shell out subsidies to giant corporations that have interests that are not those of British Columbia. Likewise, I think we need to make sure that our most vulnerable populations to this disease have adequate housing situations for people that need elder care. And lastly, I think we need to understand that while this pandemic is severe, we need a green and just recovery that can create jobs for generations to come, rather than jobs that are fundamentally unprofitable and propping up oil corporations that don't benefit BC.
Thank you, Josue. Is there anybody who would like to rebut that or add your comments to this? You can also respond or add something to your previous answer. Okay, then we go off to the next question. The next question being, how can the people of Chilliwack trust you to put your interests ahead of your party? Or sorry, how can the people of Chilliwack trust you to put our interests ahead of the party line? And the first person up for that question is Andrew Coombs.
Well, I guess the simple answer is because Libertarians don't really like to follow the collective. I guess we don't have whip votes. We have to vote the way that our bosses, who are our constituents, would like us to vote. Libertarians are pretty decentralized people anyways, and we feel that the best way to achieve the change we need is to basically make the legislature a museum and put all the power into local municipalities. It's a lot easier to go corner your mayor in his office than it is to go corner John Horgan. So we believe in individuals doing what's best for the people that put them there, and that's our constituents.
Thank you, Andrew. And up next for the same question, how can the people of Chilliwack trust you to put our interests ahead of the party line? And that's to Tim Cooper.
Well, when I agreed to run for the Green Party, one of the stories that was told to me was Elizabeth May had met a new candidate, and The new candidate was a little bit confused. I know how that feels. And the new candidate was saying, well, should I be really putting my constituents first, or do I really have to follow the party line? And Elizabeth May said it very well. If you don't put your constituents first, you can't be part of the Green Party. You'll be fired. So that is our philosophy in the Green Party, and I think it's a very good one. It attracted me. I've lived in Chilliwack for 26 years now. Chilliwack's interests are kind of my own personal interests because I intend to retire here and stay here for many, many more years, as long as I can live. But the other thing is, looking at our Green Party policies, so many of them are actually aligned with that of Chilliwack. Here in Chilliwack, farming's a big industry. The climate is changing. Farming is going to become quite difficult. I'm happy to say that I'm sitting here on the seabed of the Fraser Fjord. The water hasn't come in yet, but it will. We will soon have about 3 meters of water above this spot. That's definitely not in Chilliwack's interest, although it's the long-term interest. It's not going to affect anybody who's in this room today. So there are many ways in which the Green Party policies align with the well-being of not just Chilliwack, but actually every riding. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And up next for the same question is Dan Coulter.
I'm running for the BC NDP because I share values with the party, and I do agree with the platform of the party. That said, I will fight for the interests of the constituents of Chilliwack. For example, we are going to move SkyTrain out to Langley. I will fight for the constituents of Chilliwack to get that SkyTrain eventually moved to Chilliwack. Also, the Highway 1 will be widened by a BC NDP government. I will also fight for that to come all the way out to Chilliwack, not just to Abbotsford. There's many things that I can fight for you in the legislature as your MLA, and I look forward to doing so.
Thank you, Dan. And for the final a minute and a half answer to this question is Diane Jansen.
Thank you very much. The reason I decided to run was only one reason, and that's to represent Chilliwack. I'm passionate about Chilliwack. I've worked in Chilliwack as a city councillor, as a school trustee, and most recently as the executive director of Chilliwack Community Services. And in there, I get to work with Chilliwack Healthier Communities. And one thing Chilliwack really excels at is working together. So we've got some pretty big issues. 25,000 people in our fair community do not have a doctor. We have record numbers of homeless individuals. The number one highway is a huge issue, and both the NDP and the Liberals have only promised to bring it out to Abbotsford, and here we are. Chilliwack's been left behind again. So what I want to do is roll up my sleeves in partnership with the city, with the school district, with all nonprofits to get this job done. And I believe that we can really work together and make major inroads on the issues that we all see here. It's Chilliwack first for me all the way.
Thank you, Diane. Is there anybody who wants to add to that or rebuttal? And we'll go to Tim Cooper first and then John Martin. So Tim Cooper, you have 1 minute.
Okay, I don't think I need the full minute. Dan, you mentioned the SkyTrain coming out, and that reminded me. I'm not sure actually we can get the SkyTrain to come to Chilliwack. I hope we can, and I would certainly support that if we could. But there's a much cheaper plan, which is to bring the rail for the valley out using the old interurban railway. I would love to get that opened up and taking passengers and taking people off the Trans-Canada Highway. Not only from a carbon footprint point of view, but also I'm tired of being jammed in traffic whenever I drive back and forth to Abbotsford. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And John, you also have a minute for this for a rebuttal.
Yeah, and whoever submitted this question, big shout out to them because it's an excellent question, and it's something that troubles many people. So I've never personally, I don't consider myself really much of a party person. I've been in office for 7.5 years, and I've not had one time when a constituent was complaining on the phone or in person that I'm towing the party line instead of doing what's best for the community. And when I first got elected in 2013, one of the first things that was on the agenda was that my government was seriously considering approving an incinerator, which would have been devastating for our airshed. And I simply said, I can't live with this. There was no ultimatum. I just said, I can't live with this. More recently, we came very close to losing our much of our courts in Chilliwack. They were going to be relocated to Abbotsford, Missouri. And I said, I can't do this. I can't go along with this.
Thank you, John.
The policy of the Liberal Party
John, that's your 1 minute.
Okay.
Thank you. So we're going to go to, and again, you have another card yet, as well as for round 7, you can also answer a question of your choice. If you want to add that, you can do that as well in round 7. So for round 6, we have another question. And the question is, the NDPs introduced the $10 a day care pilot project 2 years ago to a handful of childcare centers in British Columbia, and hundreds of families, even many in Chilliwack, are still benefiting from this program. Do you think the province should roll out this program across all the daycares in BC, and give us your rationale why or why not? And first up for this question, we have Josue Anderson.
I have to give credit where credit is due. I like what the NDP is doing with the $10 a day daycare. What I think it misses is understanding a fundamental reality about the choices and freedoms that we should have in British Columbia about how we structure our families and the obligations we have to provide for those families. I think the $10 daycare is a fantastic start. But what we need to start having is a more serious conversation about the role of work within our society and the necessity for us to dedicate so much of our time to that work. I think there are many people, men and women, who would prefer to be able to stay home with their children. But because of the increased burdens that we have within our society, needless burdens, artificially created largely by mechanisms and systems of oppression, both in the government through taxation, as well as in the free market through corporate interests that fundamentally evaluate us to maximize our profits. Under a system that is more charitable to the human experience, that explores more boldly the ways that we structure our society, I would like to prefer a system where families have more choices in how they're structured and how they spend their time. I believe that with redistribution of wealth, fundamentally with, again, the wealth tax that I advocate for, we would have more resources to be able to allocate to a more just, a more joyful, and a more accurate reflection of what it means to be a human being.
Thank you, Josue. And up next, we have for the same question, $10 a day care, Andrew Coombs.
So the BC Libertarians would advocate more for opening up as many childcare spots as we can by taking away a lot of the regulation that makes daycares not profitable and not good business, I guess. We want to give families more choice. And the way you do that is by taking away the restrictions and the regulations that governments have. Governments are good at two things: regulating you to death and causing war. And both of those need to stop. And so with the BC Libertarians, we will take away as many regulations as we can to open up as many childcare spots as we can, which will in turn cause the prices for childcare to go down.
Thank you, Andrew. And up next for this question is Dan Coulter.
I'm very proud of the NDP's plan and what they've done here. They've done an amazing thing in the last 3 years. Parents have to make impossible choices sometimes, whether they go to work or whether they stay at home and look after their child because daycare is too expensive. Andrew Wilkinson and the BC Liberals called our fee reduction program expensive. And they criticize us for not doing it quick enough, but they would not do it themselves at all. It took the BC NDP to do this, and I'm very proud of this program. And we need to keep moving forward and keep making daycare more affordable for families.
Thank you, Dan. And John Martin, you're up for this question as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. So the NDP promised in 2017 that by now they would have created 24,000 new care spaces. And so far they've got a little less than 3,500. And so this their commitment is they've not followed through with it. And what we're saying is that we'll implement a $1.1 billion plan to bring in $10 a day daycare for families with household incomes to $65,000. It would be $20 or $30 a day care based on household income. Beyond that, So dramatically increasing access to childcare by building up an additional 10,000 new childcare spaces all across BC, on top of the ones added by the current government, would go a long way to providing the supply of spaces that's needed. And fully support that. And we want to encourage and support a variety of nonprofit and market-based childcare providers, expand training and support for more and better qualified childcare workers. And then basically, it would be nice to move to the Minister of State for Childcare to a full ministry so that he or she could manage licensing, funding, and oversight as well. Right now, it's kind of a ministry being worked off the side of one's desk. It needs full billing.
Thank you, John. And before I get to any rebuttals on this, we are going to be entering into our last round, which any of you candidates can answer any question you have, or I can ask you the next question. But before I do that, I want to appeal to our audience. We're pretty close on tied for our top next two questions, and I'm only going to be asking one of those if the candidates so choose that question. So make sure you get into slido.com, CHWK debate, and upvote that question. And so first of all, are there any rebuttals on this question? So Dan Coulter, you have 1 minute.
I'm very happy that the BC Liberals are planning to continue our plan to make childcare more affordable. Saying that we only funded 3,500 spaces is incorrect. We funded over 20,000 spaces in the last 2 years. 32,000 families now have $10 a day childcare, saving families up to $1,600 a month per child. The BC Liberals did not do this. For them to say that they are going to now institute childcare and do it better than the BC NDP is laughable. And how are you going to do this when you cut the PST? That's 22% of the budget of the provincial government. We know what the BC Liberals did in 2001 when they made large tax cuts to their wealthy friends. What they did was they cut services for us, and they also raised fees like the MSP.
Thank you, Dan. Is there anybody who would like to respond to that or add to this question? Okay, so we're going to be going into the round 7, which all 6 candidates are going to answer the question, and I'll just go, I'll go in reverse from alphabetical. And you can have a choice of whether you want to answer any question of your choice or the next question, which currently, thank you, audience, you've responded and you're clearly telling me which question to ask next. The next question up is, where do you stand on ICBC's monopoly? And that's the question you can answer, or you can also answer a question of your choice. So up first, John Martin, you have 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. So ICBC has always been a difficult file ever since it came into existence. And the NDP of the day, Social Credit, BC Liberal, NDP again, have all struggled with the ICBC. So what we want to do is open up competition. We want to end the monopoly. We're not talking about getting rid of ICBC. We're not talking about privatizing ICBC, but we want to give an opportunity for the private sector to come in and compete in the area of auto insurance. And that is something that I hear about every single day. When are you guys going to allow private auto insurers into the market? So that's the plan, is not to privatize ICBC, but to introduce competition and to give young drivers a break. Right now, some of them are seeing their insurance going from $1,500, $1,700 a year to $6,000 and $7,000. We need to give them credit for safe driving right off the bat, a couple years, maybe even more than that if they've completed a qualified driving instruction school. Person starting their first job, their first car, and they're being hit with a $7,000 insurance bill is absolutely outrageous. It's scandalous. It's time to end the monopoly. It's time to give people in British Columbia choice.
Thank you, John. That's your 1.5 minutes. So up next is Diane Jansen. So Diane, you can answer that question, or you can answer a question of your choice. You'll see a few of them on the screen there as well.
Thank you. So I don't agree with Mr. Eby from the NDP very often, but when he calls it a dumpster fire, he's not kidding. Who started the dumpster fire? The BC Liberals. So I find it surprising that they now want to introduce competition when they had 16 years to do it and have done nothing. They also raided ICBC. And the BC NDP, they've just poured gas on this situation. And we now pay the highest auto insurance in all of North America. So what we would do as the BC Conservatives is introduce true competition. And secondly, we would do a stem-to-stern review of ICBC. So under the BC Liberals, for example, there was a huge increase in the number of people who make $150,000 a year. And who pays for that? You, the taxpayer, you, the driver, pay for that. So we believe that a comprehensive review there needs to occur on ICBC, even if they're competing for your insurance. So that is what we would do to bring ICBC and auto insurance into line and see the reduction of rates for drivers.
Thank you, Diane. And Dan Coulter, same question or a question of your choice.
Yes, it's very interesting to hear the BC Liberals now say that they want to fix ICBC. They did rate it for $1.2 billion. It is a dumpster fire. And David Eby and the BC NDP are putting that dumpster fire out. We have taken legal fees out of the system. We are dropping rates by $400 this year. And we have a great plan to move forward with ICBC. Private insurance. I lived in Alberta where they had private insurance. Mr. Martin says that private insurance will make insurance cheaper for young people. That is not true. Private insurance is exorbitant for young people. And BC NDP, the insurance company of British Columbia, is a great institution that we've had for a long time, and we need to keep it.
Thank you, Dan. And next up is Tim Cooper.
Well, I find this question very interesting. I've had the misfortune of living in 3 countries, 2 states and 3 provinces, and all but BC have had private insurance. And my experience is that private insurance sometimes works better than ICBC, but sometimes it works a lot worse. So simply going private doesn't guarantee things are going to be better, but it doesn't guarantee they're going to be worse either. But we have to be very, very careful if we explore our private insurance, because my experience with insurance companies, private insurance companies that is the insurance company is not in the business of paying out money. They're in the business of making sure they don't pay out money, and they're going to fight. So the whole auto claims business becomes much more stressful for anybody who's trying to extract money from the system. So I like the idea of competition personally, but it's dangerous and we have to be very careful to make sure we do it well if we go that route. The Green Party, speaking on behalf of the Green Party, is okay with ICBC continuing, especially bringing on no-fault insurance. And I think that's fine. That's quite reasonable.
Thank you, Tim. And up next is Andrew Coombs.
So I guess I would start by welcoming the Conservatives and the Liberals to the end ICBC monopoly. We were the first party to be bringing this up, hosting protests outside of ICBC headquarters. We were the ones with the bumper stickers that say end ICBC. We were the first, and I guess it's good to see libertarian policies being adopted by non-libertarian parties. With regards to the NDP, the no-fault insurance is just a bad idea. You cap people's pain and suffering at $5,000. So you have a bureaucrat deciding how much your pain and suffering is worth. And that's ridiculous. A BC Libertarian Party would change ICBC into a members-owned co-op. We would allow private enterprise or private insurance to come in and compete. And back to what Mr. Coulter said, if you look across the country, private insurance in every other province that has it without no fault is lower than BC. Nova Scotia, PEI, and Alberta all have lower insurance than British Columbia, and all of them are without no fault. No fault is a bad idea, it's a dangerous idea, and it's especially bad idea when we don't have a modern wrongful death. We are the only province in the entire country that does not have a modernized wrongful death law. So if you are not a breadwinner, you are basically considered not a person by that law. So I'll say it again, wrongful or no fault insurance is a bad idea, a bad policy.
Thank you, Andrew. And up last for this question is Josue Anderson.
Well, I'm not going to pretend to hate ICBC quite as much as Andrew and the Libertarians. I think in many ways their policies are absolutely correct. I 100% agree that ICBC should have never have been created as a government monopoly, because exactly what would happen did happen when the Liberals raided it. Diane's analysis is spot on there. What I would advocate and contribute to this conversation is that I think a lot of people underappreciate that the government has the means to control very specific hoops that the private sector would have to jump through in order to compete with ICBC, whether it stays in its terrible form or gets converted into a co-op, membership-driven co-op that can be a lot more just without a no-fault system that fundamentally sacrifices the rights of victims in car accidents at the expense of the bottom line. I think that's horrendous. I think it is deplorable, and I think it is consistent with the way that the NDP prioritizes the economy and the bottom line over individual rights. But moreover, I think that it's silly to necessarily consider private sector interests to be the most dangerous thing possible when a government monopoly is systematically a lot more dangerous to the people and their safety. We can create regulations for the private sectors to compete with us, make sure that they're safe, make sure that they're accessible. And I know for me personally, I would switch over to a private firm, even if it was more expensive, simply out of a hatred out of the ICBC monopoly that the two major parties have royally messed up.
Thank you, Josue. And is there anybody who would like to rebut that or respond to any of those? You do still have a rebuttal card. You can respond to that or add to your... No? Okay, so that puts us to the end of the questions. And each of you now has 1 minute of closing arguments. And if you still have a rebuttal card remaining, you can add that 1 minute to your time. And again, we started the intros alphabetically ascending, so we'll start in reverse order. So John Martin, you'll have 1 minute for your closing remarks and tell us why Chilliwack should vote for you as our next MLA.
Thank you very much. And first off, I want to once again congratulate the Chamber, CHC, for putting on such a spectacular event under some very dire circumstances. And also want to say thank you to each and every one of the other candidates for stepping forward and participating in I think, a lively, very respectful dialogue. And hoping that a number of people in Chilliwack have had the opportunity to tune in. So I am asking for the people of Chilliwack to support me in my bid for re-election on the 24th of October. And I think that we need to ask this question of who is best going to be able to navigate us out of this pandemic. The only reason we're in an election and that we're having this debate, this all candidates meeting right now, is because John Horgan saw a political opportunity. So he broke his own fixed election date. He broke his own agreement with the Green Party, and he broke his own agreement in writing to the Lieutenant Governor not to call an election unless he lost a confidence vote. And there was no confidence vote in sight. It wasn't going to happen. We shouldn't be in an election right now. We have another 12 months. That might be the tail end of the pandemic. Nobody knows. But to put people at risk, to stop all of the vital work that needs to be going on for crass political opportunity is shameless. In March, all three parties got together to agree on a $3 billion stimulus to help workers, to help small businesses. Well, instead of that money going to small businesses, it sat. It did nothing until 3 days before the election call, when the Premier finally announced an economic recovery plan.
Thank you, John. That's your...
Now that might go out the door. If the NDP is re-elected, it might go out the door in the new year.
Thank you,
Every
John.
other province has returned that money.
John, that's your time for...
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So up next, we have Diane Jansen. And thank you, John, for also using your rebuttal card there to give yourself an extra minute. Diane, you have a minute for your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, and to the Chamber and the CHC for tonight. So I'm running for one reason and one reason only, and that is to give Chilliwack great representation in Victoria. And I've spent the last year going around Chilliwack, and what Chilliwack residents have told me is we've got to do better. Better for Chilliwack. Better to help the 25,000 people here that don't have a doctor. Better to deal with the record numbers of homeless individuals and people who are struggling with addiction. Better on the highway, on highway number 1. And in the last 8 years with John Martin, we just have not got the job done. So I am here to ask for your support to move forward together. And I am great at working with partnerships with the school district, with city council, with all the players in order to move us forward. I also wanted to just talk a little bit about the political brand. And I know things are changing a bit. So if you're a small C or big C conservative and you've ever voted conservative federally, vote for the real Conservative Party. If brand doesn't matter to you at all, and you're just wanting to get a hardworking person in there to get something done, I think I'm your gal. And I would value the opportunity to work with all partners and get things done for Chilliwack. I'm a can-do kind of person, an optimistic person, and a person who can work across all party lines. And I would value the opportunity to represent you.
Thank you, Diane. And I did use your rebuttal card there, but please, for the remaining candidates, please just hold up your rebuttal card. If you have it left, I do keep track, but I'm not 100% sure if I'm right. I think, Dan, you do not have one left, so you got 1 minute for closing arguments. It's yours for 1 minute.
Thank you. I'd love to thank the Chamber and the Chilliwack Healthy Communities again for giving us this opportunity for putting forth our ideas. The pandemic has people hurting. We all know that. People are worried about their health and their economic future. The BC Liberal approach is to give their wealthy friends tax cuts. This will result in higher fees for the rest of us. We saw this during 16 years in government. Their approach made this crisis worse. We only have to look to how they treated the most vulnerable to COVID-19, our seniors. Andrew Wilkinson and the BC Liberals changed the laws to allow privatization and cuts. They did this so that they could give the well-connected tax cuts and lucrative contracts. That contributed to outbreaks and made the pandemic worse. John Horgan and the BC NDP's plan is simple. If you want to help people, you help people. We will put people at the center of the recovery. Let's keep BC moving forward. On October 24th, I hope I have your vote.
Thank you, Dan. And up next, we have Tim Cooper for your 1 minute closing remarks, or 2 minutes, because you have a rebuttal card. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the discussion this evening has been very interesting. Most of the issues, however, can have solutions which say, well, if the government spent more money in this or on that area, we'd be able to make life better. And that's true, but the government has limited money. The Green Party has a scheme or an idea of where to get the money that we need. Times have changed significantly now. We, in the past in Canada, have had an advantage over other nations. We've had major oil, gas, and coal deposits, and they have helped us build our economy. We owe them a lot. But times have changed, and right now, the oil industry, the gas industry, has become far more of a liability than an asset. I will give you an example. Solar energy is now coming in around 2 cents per kilowatt hour. That's electricity. If you try to generate the same from gas or coal, it's around 5 or 6. That wasn't true 3 years ago, but it is true now. The times are changing dramatically quickly. Right now, the Liberal government started it, the BC and NDP have continued it, the idea of selling natural gas overseas, LNG. Well, in China, which is one of the markets that's being talked about, they can generate electricity for 2 cents a kilowatt hour using their own sunshine. Why would they be buying our natural gas at 5? The economics no longer work. And yet BC is subsidizing LNG to the tune of almost $1 billion a year. That's craziness. The Green Party will end that. That money will then be free to do other things. So I will leave that as my primary reason for voting Green.
Thank you, Tim. And over to you, Andrew Coombs, for your closing remarks.
So the BC Libertarian Party, I guess if you're to vote for me, you're voting for a guy who is passionate about property rights. I believe that the best way to save the environment is individual property rights. The best way to ensure Indigenous have a say is individual property rights. That's what liberty comes down to, is an individual being able to have control over his property, where that property is his body, his land, his money. Governments are very good at regulating war and taking other people's money. A BC Libertarian Party would increase the income tax from $10,595 that it is today to $32,000, putting more money in your pocket today. Not like the Liberals getting rid of the PST, which in fairness is a good move, but we still will put more money in your pocket. We will not subsidize any business, oil, gas, or greens. Using taxpayer money to subsidize something, especially oil and gas, and then charging a carbon tax on top of that is ridiculous. You're using government money to pay for something that you're stealing from the people anyways. We also are against sin taxes. Sin taxes do not work. We would end the tax on liquor, cigarettes, and cannabis, because those taxes do not stop people from using those. They only affect the people who are poorest in BC. So if you value property rights and you value your money, the only logical choice is the BC Libertarian Party, because we fight for you, because we see the problems with government expanding. Government thinks they can solve everybody's problems, but they only make matters worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And last for closing remarks is Josue Anderson. Yes, you get
3 minutes.
I got you. Thank you.
Thanks, William. Just waiting for the timer there. It's 3 minutes. It's not 1 minute.
I'll do 3 times.
Thanks,
You're
William.
good to go.
Appreciate it. Even now, as you are watching this debate, CGL has just called on the RCMP to remove Indigenous women doing ceremony at a pipeline drill site right this moment. The reason for that isn't because of any individual within politics. In the same way that the reason that we are cataclysmically approaching real climate dangers is because of the systems that we have grown complicit within. I know I am just an individual independent running in Chilliwack, but I represent a lot more. I represent a fundamental shift in the way that we see politics, because I think there is poison within the parties that we have grown to rely on and assume must be in power. The revolution for how we can have a more empathetic, more intelligent, more dynamic, and innovative system within British Columbia can start right here in Chilliwack. I'm not a politician. In many ways, I have no right to be on the stage other than to maximize the democratic process and to speak for the half of Chilliwack that doesn't vote, though they can, because they are so dramatically disenfranchised from many of the options that they see as viable. I believe that I can garner a tremendous amount of new voters, younger voters, more radical voters, more empathetic and informed voters who understand that we need dramatic, systemic changes and solutions that can keep up with a rapidly changing society and world and landscape. I believe that with your help and with courage, we have the means to change the way that we do politics. I haven't met anyone in British Columbia who doesn't sincerely believe the NDP are going to gain power. Spoiler alert. That's why they calculated this election during the height of a second wave of the pandemic, because their political survival is always going to be the primary necessity of their priorities. It's not even their fault. That's the system that we've grown complicit within. We need to change the systems. We need new political parties in British Columbia, certainly, and I'm here to participate in them to the best of my abilities, because the timelines are clear. We need to act now. We can't wait. We need to move, and I need your help. So on October 24th, and leading up to October 24th, get out and speak and vote and challenge your neighbors and challenge your family and challenge the institutions you work within. Because this is your last opportunity to save millions of lives before the next election in 4 years.
Thank you, Josue. So there you have it, folks. Now you know a little bit more about your candidates. If you want more information, please reach out to them and keep asking those hard questions. It is critical for our democracy that you do that. You now know them. You can reach out to them, ask them the questions, and keep engaging. And on October 24th, definitely get out and vote. So thank you so much for tuning in, watching this debate. If you are staying for our neighbor debate at Chilliwack-Kent Riding, we'll be going live shortly after a short break. I know we're running a few minutes late. We'll do our best as we can to get back on the line. And again, thanks to For the Win Media, Kinetic Signs, Cowork Chilliwack Studio, the Chamber of Commerce, and CHC for hosting this debate. Thank you. Provincially, our collective chambers represent over 36,000 businesses and organizations in British Columbia. We know we play a very important role in guiding and informing government policies and also educating our members of any policies that may impact the way they do business. We sat down with the candidates for both the Chilliwack and the Chilliwack-Kent ridings and asked them key questions for this pivotal election. I want to thank the Chilliwack Healthier Communities and the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce for hosting these videos.
Hi, my name is Jason Lum, and I'm running to be your independent candidate for the riding of Chilliwack-Kent. I'm a 3-term city councillor and also the chair of the Fraser Valley Regional District, so I've worked all across this region on issues important to you. I realize it's a tall order to ask you to think outside of your party box, but I'm here to offer an independent choice, somebody who will work hard issues directly for the constituents of Chilliwack-Kent. I've been a small business owner, I've been president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I've had extensive experience working in Victoria already on your behalf. If you're interested, please follow along on my website, jasonlum.ca, and more importantly, please consider me as your independent choice this election.
My name's Kelly Padden, and I'm your BC NDP candidate for Chilliwack-Kent. I am a public servant and an advocate, and I have devoted my career to supporting inclusive community. I accepted the BC NDP nomination because I recognize that Chilliwack-Kent deserves a strong and effective voice at the decision-making table as part of John Horgan's government. One of the things that's really important in this election is that all the voices of Chilliwack-Kent are represented in an inclusive way that brings the priorities to Victoria.
Well, thanks. My name is Laurie Thronis, and I'm the BC Liberal candidate for the riding of Chilliwack-Kent. I've actually had the privilege of representing this riding for 7 years now as MLA. It's been a tremendous privilege. I've gotten to know the people and the places and the issues in the riding. I was working on many of those issues when the writ was dropped, and so I'd like to continue to work on those issues after the election, if the people will send me back.
Too many lives have already been lost, and the BC NDP recognized that and formed the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. And we understand that this is a multifaceted issue, and there isn't one single magic bullet that will take care of everything. One of the things that we've done, in addition to the ministry, is we've doubled the number of beds for youth treatment, as well as provided adult treatment spaces, including First Nations treatment centres. Now, the BC Liberals waited until 2016 to announce this health crisis, and they also cut the number of youth treatment beds, which was not good for this issue whatsoever. John Horgan's government is working hard and collaboratively to make sure that we take a multifaceted approach and really address the intersectional issues that impact this crisis.
When I was Parliamentary Secretary for Corrections, I toured every prison in BC, and I talked to inmates and officials alike, and I found that addictions to drugs and alcohol really drive crime in BC. They drive homelessness, they drive poverty, and they drive the horrendous opioid deaths that we've seen. So we, in our platform, have decided to come to change course and to put harm reduction in its place as like an emergency room in a hospital where you help a person to survive, and then you move that person on to the hospital to cure the disease. And that's long-term residential treatment to free people from addiction to drugs and alcohol. We think that that would have a huge impact right here in Chilliwack, because about half of homeless people are addicted to drugs or alcohol, and particularly women on the street working in the sex trade are addicted, and we need to help them right here with long-term residential treatment leading to freedom from drugs and alcohol.
I've been advocating for a comprehensive response to mental health and addictions here in Chilliwack-Kent my whole public career. We need additional outreach workers. We need an assertive case management team here in Chilliwack-Kent. We need better access to mental health beds, more mental health professionals in the region. And as your independent MLA, that's exactly where I would start. Sadly, we've lost too many vulnerable folks here to the opioid epidemic, and successive governments have failed to address realistically what the issue is here, despite us advocating for years and years and years for a solution.
Well, the thing that we've announced recently, and there will be much more, is to lower the PST to zero for a year. This will have the impact of injecting equivalent of $6 billion into the market economy, into people's pockets, which will stimulate the economy. That immediate stimulus will help to grow the economy and bring back some of the taxes in other kinds of taxes in order to mitigate the effect of the tax decrease. So we think that lowering the PST is going to have a dramatic effect. However, we are building on a foundation of excellent economic management by BC Liberals. We balanced 5 budgets. We had AAA credit ratings. We left the NDP with $3 billion in surplus, which they squandered. So we wanted to get back to that good economic management, low taxes, red tape reduction, and things like that. And we think the people of Chilliwack-Kent will choose to send us back and to do that.
So the BC NDP has a plan that focuses on individuals and businesses, which includes grants that support 15,000 small and medium-sized businesses and protect 200,000 jobs. John Horgan's team is working hard to make sure that we have an economy that moves forward for everyone. And it's very critical to the BC NDP that we all understand and work with the idea that it's people who make our economy. And if we take care of people, we'll get the economy moving in the right direction.
So one of the challenges I learned from being a small business owner here in Chilliwack for almost 20 years is that businesses require certainty. They don't need a complex response. We need a scalable grant program targeting small businesses, especially ones, those most affected, whether it be in the creative sector, in the tourism and hospitality sector. I would look at a series of targeted grants directly to them to augment the current federal money that's coming in through CEBA. And then I think we need to continue to work with the local business organizations such as the Chamber, economic development offices, in order to keep a pulse on what these small businesses require in order to keep them working and to keep people employed. We need to work directly with the local employment agencies and employers to identify where those gaps exist and what barriers exist for getting people back to work in a safe manner to incentivize people back immediately. We need to work on the lack of affordable daycare so people aren't worrying about where their children are and if they're being taken care of in a safe manner. We need to provide incentives, whether it be through education, to help fill those gaps for people who need upgrading, certifications, etc. And as your independent MLA, that's exactly where I'm going to start.
Well, I've heard from many employers that government payments during COVID have actually been a deterrent to work, as workers would stay home because they had a good income. As the economy returns to normal, those the labor force will return more to normal. But there will still be problems because there were problems with labor force shortages before COVID too. And there's a variety of solutions to this demographic problem that will be required, such as more automation for repetitive tasks that humans don't want to do, lifting barriers to women in the workforce by providing more childcare, helping Indigenous youth get into the workforce, and also helping more foreign workers come into Canada, to helping the agricultural sectors and into seniors care, which is really having a hard time finding help. So there are a variety of solutions that we can bring to the table to address this problem in the future.
The BC NDP is definitely focused on getting people back to work and money moving in our economy. And the first way to do that is to support people to develop skills, to support businesses with tax cuts that can help them make improvements within their businesses, and really to focus on the training and the opportunities for British Columbians. So this is a really important area, and for me, what this requires, what this cultural safety requires, is for me to continue learning. I'm very proud that I get to learn from people in my life every day about what it means, what reconciliation means. I'm also extremely proud to be in British Columbia, and especially of the BC NDP, because we've adopted the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and we're the first province to do that. I think that cultural safety is used a lot, and it's the implementation. It's people willing to accept the humility that is required for reconciliation.
I have come to appreciate First Nations in my 7 years of service. I have spent time with them. I have listened a lot and talked a little. I've attended celebrations with them. I've been blanketed many times, which is a real privilege. And I've just sought to understand and learn from them. And with regard to cultural humility, I have sought to serve them as a servant in getting them where they need to go, whether it's finding logs or access to logging for seabird, or providing reliable power to Stalis, providing housing for Shiam, social housing for Shiacton, and also tax changes, or protecting burial mounds and a cultural site for the Stolo people in the Chilliwack River Valley. These are the kinds of things I would like to do to continue to serve the Indigenous population here in my riding.
I've worked extremely hard to educate myself around Indigenous issues here in Chilliwack-Kent. I've spent most of my public life working and learning, whether it be about UNDRIP, whether it be about the treaty process, whether it be about personally committing to the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It's an incredible honor to live and work here on the unceded territory of the Stalo people. And as your independent MLA, I'll continue to be at the table, listening and learning about the issues important to Indigenous communities all across the region, and working together in partnership to advance some of those priorities.
I vote in advance.
I vote by mail.
There are lots of ways to vote safely in the provincial general election. In advance, by mail, or on Election Day, October 24th.
Ready to make your mark? If you're 16 or 17, a resident of BC and a Canadian citizen, then you can sign up for the list of future voters. You'll be automatically registered to vote when you turn 18. Visit elections.bc.ca/futurevoters to learn more.
I vote by mail.
I vote by mail.
Voting by mail is an option for all voters in the provincial election. Visit votebymail.elections.bc.ca to request your package.
I vote.
Here's how to complete your vote by mail package for the 2020 provincial election. When you receive your package, open it and remove what's inside. If you need to register to vote or update your voter information, you'll need to provide copies of acceptable ID. Follow the instructions on the Vote by Mail ID requirement sheet. If your package does not have the Vote by Mail ID requirement sheet, that means your registration is up to date and you do not need to provide copies of ID. You can mark your ballot with a pencil or a pen. If you requested your package before candidate nominations closed, you will have a write-in ballot. A full list of candidates is now available at elections.bc.ca/candidates. To mark your write-in ballot, first, remember you are voting for your local MLA. Then write the name of the party or candidate of your choice clearly in the space provided. Make sure you write the name of a party or candidate running in your electoral district, or your vote will not be counted. A vote for a party leader will not be counted unless they are a candidate in your electoral district. You can find your electoral district in the bottom right-hand corner of the certification envelope included with your package. Remember that the complete list of candidates that you will need to mark your write-in ballot is available online at elections.bc.ca/candidates or by calling 1-800-661-8683. If you requested your vote-by-mail package after candidate nominations closed, you will have an ordinary ballot. To vote, mark an X or a check next to your choice. Do not write anything else on your ballot, or your vote may not be counted. After marking your ballot, refold it and put it in Secrecy Sleeve A. Place Secrecy Sleeve A with your ballot in it into Certification Envelope B. Make sure Certification Envelope B has your name on it, and seal it. No one else can use your certification envelope. Sign your certification envelope and provide your birth date in the spaces provided. The first 2 digits of your year of birth will be pre-filled based on when you were born. You must provide your signature and birth date, or your ballot will not be counted. If someone helps you, they must write their name in the space provided. If you make a mistake on either the ballot or the certification envelope, you can ask for a replacement voting package by calling Elections BC at 1-800-661-8683, or you can go online to request another package. When the sealed certification envelope is complete, put it inside Return Envelope C. Seal the return envelope. To return your package to Elections BC, you can mail the postage-paid return envelope or bring it into any in-person drop-off location. Find a list of in-person drop-off locations at elections.bc.ca. Elections BC must receive your completed package by 8 p.m. Pacific Time on October 24th. So please put it in the mail by October 17th or return it in person well before the deadline.
Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Provincial All Candidates Debate for the Chilliwack-Kent Riding. I'm William Clausen from the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce and I'll be your host for this evening. If you were part of our previous debate just in the last hour, I'm going to repeat a few things just for the people that have joined us. So thank you again for joining us. We are streaming live from the Co-work Chilliwack studio. And speaking of that, I can express nothing but gratitude and appreciation for Tim McAlpine of Co-work Studio. in Chilliwack, and Robbie Snooks of For the Win Media, both who are currently diligently working behind the scenes and have already spent countless hours to bring this event to you. This being my, first, now second virtual event of this magnitude, I can assure you all the mistakes and issues that may come up are all on me, because both Tim and Robbie are amazing people and are the reason we can bring this event to you at this time. This debate is brought to you by Kinetic Signs, For the Win Media, Cowork Chilliwack Studio, and our primary sponsors are the Chilliwack Healthier Communities and the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank both of the boards, their awesome staff led by Leanna Kemp at the Chamber and Sabine Mendez at CHC, and everybody who contributed in every way to this debate. Both the CHC and the Chamber are outstanding member-driven organizations that are leading the charge in probably the two most important fronts, social services nonprofit sector and the economy. It is impossible to separate these two key areas. A healthy community can only exist when both our economy is vibrant and we have an optimal social, emotional, and mental health. That is a healthy community. So in line with that, the Chamber and the CHC teamed up to bring you this critical debate. The format of tonight's debate will consist of 9 rounds, an introduction of 1 minute each for each candidate, 7 questions which each candidate will answer, and closing remarks of 1 minute. For this debate, we have 4 candidates, and each of the 4 will answer all of the questions that are being asked in each round. After the 4 have answered their question, the first 2 people with the rebuttal card up by my judgment. So we have rebuttal cards, and the first 2 people with the rebuttal card up may also respond to someone else's answer. They may add a minute to their already answer, or they can add some information. However, each candidate only has 2 rebuttal cards for the entire evening, so they need to use these wisely. And if the rebuttal card is still left over at the end of the evening, the candidates can use them for their closing remarks. Instead of 1 minute, they can have a 2 or 3 minute closing remark. And again, the questions I will be asking the candidates have not yet been entirely determined, because this is where you, as my live audience, come in. What I want you to do now, and I see many of you have already, is log into slido.com, or that's sli.do. So it's sli.do or slido.com, and log in and use the event code of CHWK Debate. The event code is CHWK Debate. And when you get into the slido.com CHWK Debate event, you choose the Chilliwack-Kent Riding Room. Make sure you're in the Chilliwack-Kent Riding Room, because that is the debate we're in right now. And when you get there, you can do one of 2 things. You can either ask a question that you may not see in the list in front of you, and if you do see the question in the list in front of you that you would like answered, give it a thumbs up and vote it up, because that's the next question I'm going to answer, the question with the most votes. So remember, I'm looking for you to pose questions and also vote them up. And if you are posing questions, I want to remind you they're being moderated, and these questions are being moderated for accuracy, factual, and making sure they're appropriate questions, and that's pretty much what we're looking for. So without further ado, I'm going to roll into the debate, and remember, you can engage right now, slido.com, that's slido.com or sli.do, and your event code is CHWK Debate, and we are in the Chilliwack-Kent Riding. So we're going to start with introductions, and we'll start with alphabetical. Eli Gagne, you have 1 minute for your introduction.
Hi, I'm Eli Gagne. I'm with the Libertarian Party. I've been in Chilliwack for about 20 years now. Started out here with UCFE, taking Psych and Crim. I'm currently working in resource protection as well as corrections, federal corrections, and I'll be here to see what I can do here. I've not really been a political individual for a very long time. Haven't been very happy with the way things have been going, so here I am, an everyday working man, to see what kind of differences I can make.
Thank you, Eli. And up next, we have Jason Lum for your 1 minute introduction.
Thank you. Good evening. First, I'd like to recognize that our debate is taking place tonight on the unceded territory of the Stalo people. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and CHC for hosting us here tonight for this incredibly important event. My name is Jason Lum. I'm a 3-term councillor with the City of Chilliwack, a 4-term board chair with the Fraser Valley Regional District. I've been a small business owner for almost 15 years. Previous to my public life, I was president of this organization, the Chamber of Commerce. I also served on a number of nonprofit and charitable organizations. I'm running as an independent in this election because I believe the citizens of Chilliwack-Kent deserve more. They deserve an accountable elected official who will bring forward the specific needs of Chilliwack-Kent to the legislature and ensure they're fighting every day on their behalf to ensure we don't get passed over and ignored here in Chilliwack-Kent. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And up next, we have Laurie Thronis for your, Kelly Padden for your 1-minute introduction.
Thanks so much. My name's Kelly Padden, and I'm very proud to be your candidate for the BC NDP for Chilliwack-Kent. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to answer questions directly, or over internet anyhow. I am an advocate, I am a public servant, and I am bringing my voice to this race because I believe that Chilliwack-Kent deserves a strong and effective voice in Victoria as part of the governing party. So I have lived in Chilliwack-Kent the majority of my life. I have a wonderful family who lives here, and when considering the nomination from the BC NDP, discussed with my family the importance of everyone here having a voice, including my kids, whose opportunities, whose choices in the future will be impacted by all of the work and all of the decisions made over the next 4 years. I want to make sure that Chilliwack-Kent's voice is heard and everyone here is represented in those choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Laurie Thronis, for your 1-minute introduction.
Well, thank you. I'm Laurie Thronis, BC Liberal candidate, and I want to begin by addressing the issue of inclusion. Some of my political opponents have tried to cast me as a strong supporter of conversion therapy, but that's just wrong. In fact, I've never made a statement about conversion therapy, and I decry and oppose any coercive practice to change another's identity. Over the past 7 years, I've always publicly affirmed the dignity and worth of every British Columbian. I accept, I respect, I care for every person, LGBTQ or otherwise, and I support their rights as well as the rights of those with more traditional views. So it's been a privilege for me to represent the riding for 7 years, and I would like to do that again. And so tonight I want to talk about our platform, to widen the number 1 highway to Whatcom Road, to spend $50 million to refurbish the emergency department of Chilliwack Hospital, to give people a choice in auto insurance of ICBC or private insurance, to lower the PST to 0. These are the things I want to talk about, and I want to thank the Chamber for having us here tonight.
Thank you, Laurie. And the way I'm going to do this for the questions is I'll be just doing it alphabetical in ascending order, and then I'll do it in reverse for one round to the next. So try to keep it as fair as possible. So just before I launch into the question, remember, log into sli.do or slido.com. So that's slido.com, and your event code is CHWK debate. And once you're in there, it's the Chilliwack-Kent riding room that we are in currently. So we're going to start off with Eli Gagne. The first question is, since equality for all is a cornerstone of any democracy, regardless of your personal views, will you commit to supporting any legislation that further improves the recognition of rights and quality of life for LGBTQ individuals? Eli, you have a minute and a half.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think that we should be in a world that we don't even have to have any recognition of segregation of different kind of groups at all. We're all the same, no matter what. And any kind of issue that comes up or any suggestion that comes up that includes these certain types of groups, I would be more than happy to take a look at it, as everybody should have a fair chance and fair play at anything that they do in life. And, we'll see what we can do. I'd love to see it. So anyone's all the same. There's no differences here. It doesn't matter race, color, religion, any kind of orientation. It's all the same.
Thank you, Eli. And for the same question, Jason Lum.
Thanks, William. I think it's telling that Mr. Thronis has to start the debate in his introduction already defending some of his views and some of the things that have been said about him. It's simple. LGBTQ rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights. It's not difficult to acknowledge that. Of course, I will support legislation that further improves recognition of rights and quality of life for LGBTQ individuals. People need to feel connected to their MLA, the person that's representing them, regardless of their faith, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, regardless of their ethnicity. And as your independent MLA, I will fight for inclusion and fight for more diverse voices to be heard at the decision-making table. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And over to you, Kelly. You have a minute and a half for the same question.
Thank you so much. This is a great question, and I think that it's telling that the people of Chilliwack-Kent have asked it. Actions speak louder than words. I've said this before, and I'm not the only person. The reason that we keep talking about this is because it keeps being an issue. I would like to be very, very clear that I am an ally, and my professional career has been devoted to amplifying the voices of people who need change and yet don't always have the audience required to make those changes. So I would absolutely support any legislation towards human rights, towards recognition of rights of marginalized groups, including the LGBTQ community. This is a non-negotiable for me. It's something that I believe we all deserve representation. We all deserve to have our voices heard, and we do not need to all agree with each other in order for those to be valid things. We need to take care of each other. We need to move forward together. And I really would stress that we need to ask these hard questions moving forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And for the last answer to this question, over to you, Laurie Thronis.
Much. In my opening statement, I talked about equality for all, and I affirmed equality for all, and those are my personal views. So when it comes to legislation, I've seen much legislation before the House. I've sat in the Legislative Review Committee. Every piece of legislation is a unique thing. You have to look at what's in the legislation before you decide whether you can oppose or support it. I don't at all rule it out that I would support legislation in this area, but I would have to look at it, and I think that's only logical, and I wait for a BC Liberal government to bring that forward.
Thank you, Laurie. And if anybody wants to use a rebuttal card to respond to that or add anything, now's the chance. This is how that works. You can put it up, or we can go on to the second round for the next question. Okay, so we'll go on to the next question. The next question we have, and thank you listeners who are tuning in. I'm getting lots of votes on these questions. So our next question is, what are the top three infrastructure projects that you would prioritize here in the riding? And we'll start with Laurie Thronis with your minute and a half.
Well, thanks very much. The first one would be diking. I mean, that's integral to the survival of our community. So we need about $30 million for that. That would be first. The second would be $50 million, which we have committed to refurbish the emergency department in the Chilliwack Hospital. And the third, I think, is necessary for Cultus Lake. Cultus Lake has had a wastewater issue going for some time now. There is a project run by the Fraser Valley Regional District that has run into real problems, and they're in dire need of a grant. And so I will be, if I am chosen as MLA, struggling to get that grant for them, as I have been for some time now. So those would be my three top projects.
Okay, thank you. And over to you, Kelly Padden, for the same question.
Thanks so much. I think that there's actually a lot of different infrastructure that is needed in Chilliwack-Kent, and I would definitely be interested in learning more directly from constituents. But to what I have been hearing so far, people are definitely talking about transportation, about widening of the highway, which is something that the BC NDP has committed to doing. And I would be bringing our voices and asking and representing Chilliwack-Kent on why is it stopping in Abbotsford, and questioning that. There are other transportation options as well that we may be pursuing. It would really depend on what the voices of Chilliwack-Kent say. As well, I know that there are communication and access issues as well as water issues within the Fraser Valley Regional District, specifically up in Cultus Lake. And I know that that's become a safety issue as well. So infrastructure-wise, that would be an issue that I would be bringing forward. And I do know that parents and students and teachers are talking to me about schools. I do know that there are some expansions in the works. I would want to see if that's actually going to satisfy our needs, and then take a look at the other issues that are important to people in Chilliwack-Kent.
Thank you for your answer, Kelly. And up next is Jason Lum. Same question.
Thanks, William. Well, infrastructure is something that I'm keenly aware of, and the infrastructure needs here in Chilliwack, but not just Chilliwack, but Kent and Agassiz, Harrison Hot Springs. The top three we'd be looking at, I agree, fish-friendly flood protection and flood mitigation structures. I would agree with the sewage treatment plant needs up in Kent or in Cultus Lake, and also addressing some significant transportation issues here. Let me be clear. We have an infrastructure deficit in Chilliwack-Kent because successive governments have ignored the real infrastructure requirements here for many, many years. I've seen in some of the platforms up to $8 billion offered in infrastructure funding, and by my count, 2.4% of that should come right back here to Chilliwack-Kent. That's $192 million to address some of the infrastructure deficit here. Schools, hospital expansion, flood mitigation structures, critical infrastructure like sewage treatment plants. So if elected as your independent MLA, that's the goal. The priority list put forward to whatever government's in power and fight like hell to get that infrastructure right here to Chilliwack-Kent.
Thank you, Jason. And now over to you, Eli, for the same question. You have a minute and a half.
Yes, I'm relatively new to doing all of this, but one thing that I did find out while talking to people about getting in, I don't have three projects, but two, and they were the biggest ones that were brought up to me all the time being questioned. And one was education, and the other was also transportation. So those are two that I'd definitely like to look at and see what we can do for sure. As far as the third, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that one.
Okay, thank you, Eli. And is there anybody who would like to do a rebuttal or response to that? Just remember, you're allowed to disagree, just like was mentioned earlier, so now's your chance to do that or add anything to your question. Alrighty, thank you. So we will be heading over to round 3 for another question that's getting a lot of votes. And the question for this is, what is your party's stance on harm reduction and safe supply related to the opioid crisis? And we'll start off with Eli for this question. You have a minute and a half.
We recognize that there's a problem going on right now, and there are things that we would like to try and see doing. Harm reduction and safe supplies. What we'd like to do is have like safe injection sites, non-profit places where they can go, purity test centers, things like that, where people can, go. And, we're a party that is about not necessarily telling people what they can or cannot do and overgovern everything. If that's something that they're going to be doing, then at least have a safe place to do it, a safe place to go, and hopefully reduce the amount of problems that's happening with it that go along with it as far as overdosing and deaths, because there are a lot of resources being taken out on there that are a lot of money is being spent on that. So hopefully we can try and curb that by having these centers and places to go.
Thank you, Eli. And for the same question, Jason Lum.
Thank you. I support both measures, and I've been an advocate for both measures, but I also support the additional supports required here in Chilliwack-Kent to assist those struggling with addiction, with mental health issues. I've been advocating strongly for assertive community treatment here in Chilliwack-Kent. We've consistently advocated to Fraser Health for additional outreach services. I recognize that we made strides with the Riverstone Home and Detox and some more person-centered treatment options and supports for those struggling. It's unacceptable that we live in a society where we benefit from so much, and yet we have so many people who are still falling through the cracks. So again, as your independent MLA, I will support good evidence-based policy to address the addiction and mental health struggles of folks here in Chilliwack-Kent and beyond.
Thank you, Jason. And Kelly, for the same question, harm reduction and safe supply of drugs through the opioid crisis. You have a minute and a half.
Great, thank you. The reality is that there have been way too many lives lost. Harm reduction and a safe supply are part of a multifaceted solution towards the opioid crisis, and we really do not have the luxury of leaving anything out when we're fighting this. It comes along with prevention to keep our kids safe, education, treatment, rehabilitation. These are important parts to this fight, and it really is a fight to keep our neighbors, our friends, our families alive. So the BC NDP has doubled the number of youth treatment beds. When we formed government, there was no system to fight this. And as a matter of fact, before the COVID crisis or pandemic, we had actually seen a reduction, which is a really, really important thing, because we know that by fighting this on all fronts, by taking a multidisciplinary approach, we really can make a difference here. We're increasing treatment beds, 800 new treatment beds, including First Nations treatment. And these are all important parts of really making sure that we are addressing this health crisis in a way that will keep BC safe, keep people in BC safe, and save lives.
Thank you, Kelly. Same question to you, Laurie Thronis.
Thank you. And, the NDP talks a lot, but under their watch, deaths from opioids have increased to 170 a month, which is just awful. And so we think there needs to be change. So our party stance on harm reduction is that we support harm reduction in its proper place. I see harm reduction as like the emergency room in a hospital. We have to save people, absolutely. We have to bring them back from the brink. But it would be wrong if a person was sick in emergency and you just sent them home. No, we have to be sending them along to the hospital for treatment. And the hospital in this case is long-term residential treatment leading to freedom from drugs. And if we do that, that will resolve many problems for those people to have their life back, but also to solve homelessness and poverty and violence and all sorts of other ills. When it comes to safe supply, there will always be some people with entrenched habits, and those people will require safe supply for a long time. But that is not the rule. Let's not confuse the exception for the rule. The rule is that people, if they're equipped with the right tools, can break free. And right now there is no abstinence-based treatment approved or paid for by Fraser Health, and we think that's wrong. So we're going to apply harm reduction in its proper place, and then we're going to send people along to help them break free so that they can live out their potential in their lives.
Thank you, Laurie. Is there anybody who wants to rebut? Okay, thank you. Kelly, you have 1 minute to respond to that.
Great, thank you. I do find it very surprising that Laurie would say that, harm reduction is for emergencies. This is an emergency. And I mean, the failure to recognize that it's an emergency shouldn't be surprising, because it took the BC Liberals until 2016 to declare that this was an emergency. And as far as relating substance abuse or the opioid crisis to homelessness, there are many reasons for homelessness, and to criminalize homelessness is just wrong. Everybody deserves the dignity of a home. And although the substance use contributes, and we understand that it contributes, as does mental health, potentially disability, and definitely the issues with affordability in British Columbia, we need to stop criminalizing the fact that some people don't have homes. This is a crisis, this is an emergency, and we need to use all the tools at our disposal to fight for people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. So that's how rebuttal cards work. So if you do want to respond to anything, that's how they work, and you get a minute to do that. So anybody else want to respond to that? Alrighty, then we'll go to round 5. But before I do that, I want to just appeal to the audience again. Thank you so much for voting and get me the next question that I can ask the candidates. We will be doing 3 more rounds. So in order to do that, I know in our last debate, we had over 150 questions that came in. And, the same for this debate. There's a lot of questions. We only have time to answer a few of the really hard ones. So make sure you get onto slido.com and vote up those questions so I can ask those questions for you. So we'll go to the next question that has been voted by our audience. And the next question is, and we'll be starting with, I believe I started with, I'll be starting with Eli this time. And it's, please explain how you represent the interests, rights, and concerns of your Indigenous communities and ways in which you will prioritize strong relationships with those communities. Eli, you have a minute and a half.
just first off, I'd like to say actually I am First Nations in my ancestry, so it is kind of important to me to make sure that that they are being recognized and seen. As far as how I'll represent them and their interests and rights, I'm open to suggestion. So far what we've seen, obviously you're not happy. So, if I get to get the opportunity, then I would like to hear suggestions on what would make them happy and what we could do to make sure that they feel safe and secure in this situation.
Thank you, Eli. And Jason Lum, over to you for the same question.
Thank you, William. Another important question. It's important to sit down at the table and to be open and accessible and to listen to the concerns and then the priorities, respecting the sovereignty of First Nation governments here in Chilliwack-Kent. If you sit and you listen, you hear the priorities of Indigenous communities here in Chilliwack-Kent. I pride myself on having spent my whole elected career working, learning, trying to understand more about the rich cultural history, the vibrant cultural history of the Stalo here in Chilliwack-Kent. And again, as your independent MLA, I want to be a representative for all of those priorities. I think I think you give kudos where kudos is due, and the NDP enshrining UNDRIP into legislation was an important first step. We can also start to look at the important calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and really work every day, day in and day out, to build those stronger relationships with our Indigenous partners here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And Kelly, over to you for your minute and a half.
Thank you. From the day the NDP formed government, we've been focused on trying to build these relationships. As Jason mentioned, we're incredibly proud. I'm incredibly proud that we were the first province to really make our commitment to UNDRIP. And it's critical moving forward that we're basing our understanding, our learning on relationships that we're building, government to government, but also person to person. I know that in my conversations with people, both during the nomination period as well as the campaign period, I have been overwhelmed by how much information people want to share, how much I can learn directly from individuals, from groups. Approaching this with humility, approaching this with the idea and the really honest belief that we are all moving forward together in British Columbia, and it requires all of us to make this successful. I'm just very, very grateful for the information that has already been shared with me, that I have learned over the course of my career while I have been working in and around many of these communities, specifically with individuals who we're working on issues around Indigenous rights, around access, and I just look forward to continuing to build these relationships, person to person, government to government. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Laurie.
Been representing the interests and rights of First Nations in the legislature. This summer, for instance, I voted for UNDRIP, and I also voted for legislation that will give First Nations across BC a share of lottery benefits for 25 years into the future. So I've been doing some tangible things. But for me, it's also about listening. It's about taking time. It's about sitting down with them and hearing their stories and hearing their ideals and aspirations and hearing their perspective, how they see the world and how they see the land. And so I've taken time to do that. I've attended numerous community events. I'm a regular participant at Let's-Mo, which is a municipal First Nation partnership designed to air issues between them and present a common front. So I've been attending those things. And I also advocate for First Nations for a number of things. For instance, I'm helping the Stolo with advocating to protect burial mounds in the Chilliwack River Valley, so they'll have a sacred place. Shiacton, I'm advocating for social housing for them, and Shiam as well. Access to logs for Seabird, and reliable power for the Stahelis people. So I have been representing them and working hard for them, and I would love to be their servant in the future for the next 4 years.
Thank you, Laurie. And is there anybody who would like to rebut that or respond? Okay, thank you. So we'll go off to the next question for round 6. This is a little bit of a longer question, so just let me get it up in front of me. BC governments predict 63% growth in senior population between 2020 and 41, with the percent for 2020 to 2041, with the percent of people over age 65 projected to encompass nearly 25% of the population. What plans does your party have to address challenges of meeting health and social needs of an increasing number of seniors in our province? And Laurie, we'll start with you for a minute and a half on that question.
Well, thank you. And this is an important question. You know, COVID really exposed a weakness in our health system and our system of care for seniors. Almost all of the seniors who died or all the people who died in COVID were the median age of 85, and most of them were in retirement homes. So we've seen the need to change things and improve things. So we've promised $1 billion in our platform over 5 years to refurbish seniors' homes across BC and to give seniors a private residence, to provide a tax credit to help seniors live at home longer, to provide programs to help renovate their houses so that they can stay, and a number of other issues on which we would help seniors. For instance, helping them to have visits. There's been a lot of inner distress and turmoil for seniors who have basically been locked in their seniors' residences alone for months at a time during COVID, and we think that's awful. And so we need to find a way to safely visit them and to protect them. You know, I don't think at COVID that we protected our seniors well enough, obviously. And so we need to take further steps, strong steps to protect our seniors as they age and as their numbers increase into the future.
Thank you, Jason. And over to you, Kelly, for the same question.
Great question. Our seniors are most at risk, and I will agree with my colleague that this pandemic did expose a lot of the gaps for seniors. And these gaps were created by the BC Liberals during 16 years of cuts and neglect. Contract flipping resulted in the staff that supports seniors being so underpaid that they had to work at multiple sites, which is something that we've put a stop to. It also resulted in this privatization where service hours are grossly underdelivered. We're fixing understaffing. We're fixing the problems that the BC Liberals left behind, and we have a plan to care for seniors. This is a massive area where there's extreme vulnerabilities. And so I'm very surprised to hear a plan to inject funds into seniors coming from the BC Liberals into these supports when many of the issues that came up that were exposed by this pandemic that we are in the process of fixing, they came up during the 16 years of cuts to supports and funding. So we've only just started this work. There is a lot of work to do, and we are focused and dedicated to supporting seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Jason, for the same question.
Thank you, William. I guess I'd have to challenge both my colleagues from the NDP and the BC Liberals to identify specifically what investments, what capital investments, what operational investments will be committed specifically to Chilliwack-Kent. We have a Bradley Centre that needs to be replaced. I've advocated consistently to Fraser Health for that replacement. We've gone so far as identifying property at the Fraser Valley Regional Hospital District, of which I'm a director, and purchasing that property to try and accelerate the replacement of the Bradley Centre. But we need those critical operational dollars. I've heard my colleague from the NDP identify failure in the Liberal project, but I have not heard what the NDP will specifically do to increase supports to seniors and our most vulnerable here in Chilliwack-Kent. It is an indicator of the health of our community and our society, of how well we take care of our elders, and we are failing. You need somebody in the legislature who's going to hold whatever party is in power accountable for some of the promises that they're made. These are too important to be toyed with at election time. We need these investments, and we need them now.
Thank you, Jason. And over to you, Eli, for the same question.
Yeah, I'm still along the lines with, as well as wanting to take a look at budgeting and where the money is actually going, having a full review of that, and see what we can do to improve things and change things. Anything specific? I don't have anything specific that for as far as a project goes to work on that, other than I would like to see where the funding is going. Personally, my father had passed away of cancer in May, and we did have problems as far as healthcare goes with him. He ended up passing away at home, which was probably better, but due to funding that wasn't there, and even funding for himself, he couldn't afford to have everything that he absolutely needed. So I couldn't help to think, but maybe he could have had a better quality of life, and maybe for a little bit longer, if things were better put in place as far as care goes for seniors. So that's something that I'd really like to take a look at.
Thank you, Eli. Anybody would like to rebut or respond to that? Alrighty, so we'll move over to round 7. This is a multi-part question, so we'll do our best to give you the time you need to answer it. Where do you stand on widening Highway 1 out to Chilliwack? And probably in relation to that more is, where do you stand on the current government policy of only allowing certain unions to bid on public projects, even though these unions only represent a small portion of the actual trades and construction workers in the province? So it's up to you. It's a 2-part question, but you can answer the question as you see fit for yourself. And we'll start off with Eli for your minute and a half.
Okay. Well, as far as standing about widening the highway, totally for it. We have a problem here with traffic, especially now. A lot of people have moved eastbound more than they have in a very short period of time. So we definitely need to get that sorted out. As far as only allowing certain unions to bid on public projects and things, again, we're a party that allows people to do what they want, how they want. We don't have any specific kind of view on whether or not a certain person should be able to bid on anything specific. We're just already at a point where we need to allow anybody to be able to do what they want to do, and be able to just work every day. I was in trades myself, for a little while, so everybody needs to be able to work. So if there's an opportunity for anyone to be able to work, then let's do it.
Thank you, Eli. And Jason Lum for the same question.
Thanks, William. Again, another issue where I've consistently advocated on behalf of both the Fraser Valley Regional District and the City of Chilliwack to support the widening of Highway 1. We have congestion issues. We have environmental sustainability issues. We've got transportation issues where our regional transit system, our buses are stuck in congestion because of the traffic and the amount of traffic on the highway. As for only certain unions to bid on public projects, I don't even think we've advanced this project to the point, either government has advanced this project to the point where a bid or a tendering process has got out. I'd have to look at the specifics of it, but being a small business owner, my first impression is we have a responsibility for fiscal prudence to the taxpayer and ensuring that we get these projects built as a fiscally prudent manner possible. Building Highway 1, it's incredibly important for us to be able to get our goods and services both in and out of the valley. And certainly this is one of the big frustrations that's brought forward by constituents. But it's not the only transit options that we have. And I also believe in looking at other regional transit options, including rail and rapid bus. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And before I go to Kelly for her answer to this question, I am going to add a bonus round of questions because we have time for that. Just because we've been short on our answers and everybody's been answering them quite well. So we have an extra round. So Chilliwack, I'm appealing to you. If you're listening, log into slido.com and make sure you give me the next question I'm going to ask the candidates. You'll see them up there. The next question with the most votes will be the one for the 8th round. And so we'll get back to this question. Kelly, where do you stand on the Highway 1 and the current public policy of public unions? 1.5 minutes.
Great, thank you. And thank you so much for the bonus round. As I've already expressed, widening and modernizing Highway 1 out to Chilliwack would be amazing. It's something that I'm definitely going to advocate for. We've already got commitments out to Abbotsford, and I'm very excited to represent Chilliwack-Kent and the voices here, as well as work with Chilliwack as well, to make sure that we really have voices at the decision-making table there and can advocate strongly. Regarding the second part of the question, the government policy on allowing certain unions, I'm going to make an assumption here that what is being referred to are the community benefit agreements. So this is a way for us to be able to make sure that infrastructure projects that benefit local areas are also using local work. Often people who are underrepresented, often people who have traditionally been excluded from some of these projects. This might include women, this might include Indigenous peoples. The BC Liberals built or expanded 7 hydro dams, with project labor agreements nearly identical to the community benefits agreements, or CBAs, and now they're claiming to be against them. As always, the decisions on these are made on a case-by-case basis, but we can make sure public projects benefit local workers in their communities by hiring locally and growing local economies.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Laurie, for the same question.
Well, thank you. And our BC Liberal platform has promised to widen the highway out to Whatcom Road, and that's farther, I think, than the NDP have promised out to Abbotsford. Eventually, we'll get out to Chilliwack, but the next tranche will be out to Whatcom Road. What we're talking about here are community benefit agreements indeed, and this is one of the more egregious things that the NDP have done over the past 3 years. They've set up a system where they will only allow certain unions to bid on public projects, which excludes 85% of tradespeople across BC from bidding on public projects, and it raises the cost of every public project by about 15%. That means we can do 15% fewer public projects, and it makes no sense for the taxpayer. And there's just a real sense of injustice here, and we've heard a lot about that. So we are going to abolish community benefit agreements, and we're going to open up bidding across the board to anyone who wants to bid and get the best bang for the taxpayer's buck and the best number and quality of projects all across BC for infrastructure.
Thank you, Laurie. Is there anybody who wants to rebut to that? Thank you, Jason. You have 1 minute to rebut that or respond to that.
Thank you, William. And again, with all due respect to Mr. Thronis, he said today's BC Liberals have committed to widening the highway out to Whatcom Road. Actually, yesterday's BC Liberals committed to widening the highway out to Whatcom Road as well. It's a huge challenge, and what we're seeing here is how Chilliwack-Kent, again, gets left out of the equation. The Fraser Valley doesn't begin and end in Abbotsford, and we need an MLA who will fight for the needs of Chilliwack-Kent. I get on that highway every other day, and I'll tell you, congestion does start further east than Whatcom Road. So it's a huge challenge, and I think, again, you need somebody who's going to hold whatever government is in power accountable for these promises that are made. And they often come up right around election time and then are forgotten later down the road.
Thank you, Jason. And Laurie, you would like to respond to that. You have 1 minute to respond to that.
Well, thank you. And we did promise this in 2017. We did not form government. The NDP promised it as well and did not deliver. We have a history of delivering on infrastructure projects around the province. We've built numerous, I can't even count the number of things that we've built, but we would get this done and we would start right away. And so yes, we've promised it out to Whatcom Road. It will get to Chilliwack eventually. We've also promised more BC Transit to extend into the Fraser Valley. So there are options coming up, and the $8 billion that we're going to be spending in infrastructure over the next 5 years are going to address these things.
Thank you, Laurie. And then we'll go over to the next round of questions, which is, and we'll start with you again, Laurie, but here I'll read the question. The question is, while we haven't yet felt the full economic impacts of the pandemic, officials at all levels of government are turning towards economic recovery. Does your party have specific plans that address people most impacted by social issues? How will your party ensure that vulnerable populations won't get forgotten? And Laurie, you have a minute and a half to answer that.
Well, thank you. And this is so important. You know, COVID has exposed social rifts, and so we see the need to address social issues while we're emerging from COVID. So we're going to keep on spending on healthcare and education. We're going to provide childcare. In fact, we're going to spend $1.1 billion a year on childcare. The NDP are only spending $680 million. So we're going to outdo the NDP on childcare. We're going to build more affordable housing. These are the kind of issues. We're going to hire more mental health workers for the homeless, and so we're not forgetting about these social issues. But we also have to turn toward economic recovery, and that's where infrastructure can play a part. If you build a new bridge to replace the Massey Tunnel, that will replace millions of hours sitting in traffic. Turn that into productive capacity, and it's the same with the number one. The bottlenecks will not be there, and people will be able to spend more time in productive hours. And we're also going to drop the PST to zero for a year. And we do that as an economic stimulus. It will be an immediate boost to the economy as people will say, well, I can afford that car now where I couldn't before, or that washing machine. Or a business person will say, I can afford to hire that piece of equipment that's going to increase my profits and save labor. And so we have a real eye on the bottom line, that we have a plan in 5 years to return to a balanced budget. And I think under the BC Liberals, you can trust that we are good economic managers and that we will be able to bring the province of BC out of the COVID storm.
Thank you, Laurie. And up, Kelly, you're next for the same question.
Thanks so much. John Horgan and the BC NDP understand that the economy is people. People are the economy, and we need to invest in people in order for a full economic recovery. So the question is very accurate. We haven't felt the full impacts yet. We know that there's still things to come, and several of the parties have discussed how the deficit is an unfortunate reality of the current situation. Does our party have specific plans to address those most vulnerable? Absolutely, we do. Laurie was talking about how the BC Liberals are going to cut PST. This doesn't actually help a lot of families who are most vulnerable, a lot of people who are most vulnerable. This will not save money on rent. This will not help with groceries. It will not feed kids. It will not clothe kids. It will not house kids. That is not the cut that will help anyone but the people at the top, the people who aren't the ones who need it the most. We have definitely laid out our plans for affordability. We have indicated how we're going to invest in healthcare, in seniors care, in childcare. We've definitely laid out how we're going to support small and medium-sized businesses who are going to be, they already are, the heart of our community. We have to focus on the people who need it. That includes small and medium-sized businesses, tourism industry, and people who are most vulnerable, not people who are making the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Jason, for the same question.
Thank you. And I think you ensure that the vulnerable populations don't get forgotten by electing somebody who's going to hold whichever party forms government accountable for the promises that they're making around election time. You know, it's easy to have a party line and to deliver it tonight to the voters of Chilliwack-Kent. What's a lot harder is after the election is won and people have been used to gain power and then forgotten about, to deliver on some of those promises. It's incredibly important that we address the needs of the most vulnerable here in any recovery plan. And my challenge again to both of my colleagues would be to identify specifically in the billions of dollars that are being announced, what will come directly to constituents of Chilliwack-Kent. I think that's the huge question that needs to be answered here tonight. And it behooves both of my colleagues to be able to specifically answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And before we get to you, Laurie, I see you have your rebuttal card, but I'll let Eli answer the question as well for a minute and a half.
as far as any specific plans, there isn't like a specific outline to be done. Things that we would like to look at is changing, what we can do as far as taxes go. We want to, raise the minimum line to about 32,000. We want to be able to see what we can do for our small businesses as well that are even local. We want to be able to do everything we can as far as to be able to have the people be able to work as themselves. That's one thing that we've kind of been going away from right now, is that all these big companies and big corporations are just kind of getting in the way of being able to do this, and they're taking over while this is going on, and we need to be able to figure out ways to do that. So we're in the middle of being able to try and figure that out.
Thank you, Eli. And I believe, Laura, you had a response to that. So you have a minute.
Yes. Mr. Lum asked for specifics about what would come to our riding from the infrastructure program that we're planning. And we are announcing tonight that we would spend $50 million to refurbish the emergency department of Chilliwack General Hospital. He says that we should have $190 million from that $8 billion. Well, we're a quarter of the way there yet, and we haven't even had the election. This is the beauty of a team. This is the beauty of being part of a party that links arms together, makes a plan together, and can actually form government and make that plan happen. As an independent, it would be very difficult for Mr. Lum to go into the legislature and command that kind of respect in, for instance, a caucus where he can't deal with other people in caucus. He's not part of a team. And so I'm part of a team, and I'm hoping that you will see, the viewer will see, that a team is really beneficial for Chilliwack-Kent.
Thank you, Laurie. Any response to that or to the original question? Okay, thank you very much. I believe we do have time for one more question, so I'm going to throw one more question out there. So just bear with me as I pull it up here for a minute, and that'll be the last question of the evening before we get to your closing remarks. I know some of you have been hanging on to your response or rebuttal cards. You get to use those in your closing remarks if you so choose. So we do have one more question that we have time for before we end the debate, and the question that we will be asking for all of you is, what ideas do you have to protect the wilderness areas on Crown land in the Chilliwack River Valley, which are being bombarded by overusage, illegal dumping, and violations of conservation regulations? And I believe we'll start with Eli on that question.
For this question, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that one. It's not anything that I've been able to touch upon quite yet. But what I can say is that if elected in, I'm more than happy to take in suggestions to answer the people.
Thank you. Jason Lum.
Thank you. Another incredibly important issue, and one that, again, I've been advocated consistently on as my role as chair of the Fraser Valley Regional District. We need to quadruple our illegal dumping fines. We need to rebuild our conservation service after years of liberal cuts and cuts to support services for conservation officers. We need a significant increase in the amount of conservation officers in the backcountry who are ensuring that those who want to come and take advantage of our wild places are held accountable when they're caught illegally dumping on Crown land. We also have huge challenges with homeless individuals who are getting increasingly pushed out of more urban areas and ending up in, especially up in the Chilliwack River Valley. We need to focus supports to those individuals, whether it's a rural outreach program, again, more mental health and addictions programs, to go and assist individuals that are, again, out in the more rural areas in the CRV. People come from all over to recreate in really what is the crown jewel of the Fraser Valley, and that is the Chilliwack River Valley. But it's also a sacred place, and again, deserves the time, care, and attention paid to it to ensure that people aren't abusing it.
Thank you, Jason. And over to you, Kelly, for the same question.
Great, thanks so much. We are so incredibly lucky to be able to live in a place that is so beautiful that people flock to, that people are moving to because it's a great place to live. I think that one of the key elements to this question is that we're going to need to work across levels of government to make sure that the different pieces impacting different places within Chilliwack-Kent, different areas, including within Chilliwack River Valley, that we're addressing all the issues that are contributing to any disruption of the environment, nature, usability, enjoyment, illegal dumping and violations and conservation issues, of course. But we're really going to have to work in partnership. And I think this is also an area where I am excited that to learn more directly from the people who are seeing and experiencing things firsthand, so that I can understand where the partnerships need to lie, what needs to be advocated for exactly that will actually solve the root of the problem and not just cover it up, not just delay it or move it somewhere else. So I'm excited to learn more about this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Laurie, for this question.
To the Vedder River Cleanup Society here, which has been working for years to bring out volunteers to help clean up in the Chilliwack River Valley. I've often spent time cleaning up on their cleanup days with them and really enjoyed their participation. And that is of such benefit to the people of Chilliwack. We in our platform have promised to double the camping spaces in BC. And I think that is a huge part of the problem. During the COVID time, people flocked out to the Chilliwack River Valley because they wanted open spaces, and the provincial parks were closed. So they really clogged up the highway and left a lot of garbage. But the campsites that we have, which are hosted sites, are really much more orderly. And so I have argued in the past, and I will argue now through our platform, that we need to increase the number of orderly hosted campsites that we have in the Chilliwack River Valley. I also want to mention that as part of the SXTA treaty process, a large land offer on the bottom of Chilliwack River Valley has been made to 6 Stolo First Nations. And that is a years-long process, but that may also help to bring order to this situation as the Stolo people come to fruition with their treaty and begin to impose their own order on their own land. And so there are things coming up, and we as BC Liberal government will be able to address them.
Thank you, Laurie. And before we get to the closing remarks, you guys are being so efficient answering the questions, and I know the people of Chilliwack-Kent are expecting this debate, and they're looking at this and making sure this is an important time for them. So I'm going to give you one more question. I promise that'll be the last one before we get to your closing remarks. So the next question is what is your party's plan to incorporate measures to address the BC climate crisis? So what is your party's plan to incorporate measures to address the climate crisis in the work of the economic recovery in British Columbia? And I'll start with you, Laurie Thronis. You have 1.5 minutes.
Already we have done much. 93% of the electricity in BC is clean. We have a carbon tax that the BC Liberals instituted. Ours was a revenue-neutral carbon tax, and that we gave it back in tax relief. The NDP took over $1 billion a year to have more big government programs, and so we have many proposals in our platform to increase the amount of solar and wind that we have in BC, to increase the number of charging stations for electric vehicles, and so that's the kind of thing that we would do in order to address the climate crisis.
Thank you, Laurie. And over to you, Kelly, for the same question.
Thanks. So the climate crisis is a global challenge, and it is here. We are seeing evidence of it all the time. We're very proud to have put forward the most ambitious climate plan in North America. And we're very excited that all of the infrastructure work, all of the work that we're putting forward in our commitments, in our Working for You platform, will require compliance with that climate plan. We have so much left to do. We have to get started. We've set amazing targets, and we're very excited about the technology and the investment in technology and learning that we're making to make sure that that happens. I have, like I mentioned before, I have 2 kids, and I am committed to the BC-NDP in large part because it's their future that's relying on this, their future and the future of all of their friends and their families. So I am very, very proud of the commitment that the BC-NDP has made to climate. I do find it interesting. for the BC, when the BC Liberals talk about climate leadership, because they did put together a panel and then ignored nearly all of the recommendations that came from it. So I would be interested to see if there would be any difference. However, I'm firmly committed to working for and working on the climate plan that the BC NDP has put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And over to you, Jason.
As a independent MLA, my role will be to hold whichever party is in power accountable. This is critical when they're putting forward measures around environmental sustainability, around climate action. The climate is changing, that is undeniable, and we need an appropriate response. I have advocated consistently for natural asset management, for protection of wild salmon, for more habitat protection, for additional supports, as I spoke earlier, to the Conservation Service to prevent illegal dumping. These are absolutely critical areas. Again, my challenge to both of my colleagues is to identify what kind of specific dollars will come to Chilliwack-Kent in relation for some of these, either supporting community resiliency, green infrastructure projects. I studied the bilateral agreements from the federal government to the provincial government. We should get at least $50 million of green infrastructure funding right here in Chilliwack-Kent. And as your independent MLA, I will fight tooth and nail for every last penny of that. That's your money. You've already spent that in your tax dollars. You deserve to have it come back into this riding.
Thank you, Jason. And over to you, Eli, for your answer for 1.5 minutes.
One thing that we would like to for sure look into is different projects for clean energy all around to help with our climate crisis going on. As already stated before, there's a lot of work to be done. We don't, again, have a specific plan to go in place for that. That is something that I do want to look into as well, something I want to delve into and take a look at why it already hasn't been worked on already.
Thank you, Eli. And so that ends the question and answer part of our debate. We do have closing remarks yet, and I believe some of you still have rebuttal cards left over. We're going to start with a reverse order of alphabetical this time. So Laurie Thronis, you get to start with your closing remarks, and I believe you have just 1 minute.
Well, thank you. And I just want to reflect for a moment on the past 3 years. In 2017, when the NDP took power, we left them with a $3 billion surplus, a booming economy, a AAA credit rating, and 5 years of balanced budgets, even after a punishing recession in 2008. When the NDP took over, they spent the surplus within a couple of years. They instituted 23 new or increased taxes. And then COVID hit and the financial cupboard was bare. We were economically vulnerable. And now we're facing a deficit of $12.5 billion. So just compare our record with the NDP record. It's true that they've managed to contain COVID by following the advice of Bonnie Henry and the opposition parties. But now we think it's time to hand the reins over to someone with experience, someone with the skills, with a track record of proven economic management. And we think that should be the BC Liberals. So it's been my pleasure to serve as MLA for the past 7 years. I'm asking for your support to continue doing that good work, to put in place the platform of the BC Liberals. And I want to thank the Chamber again for hosting this great event.
Thank you, Laurie. And over to Kelly, I believe you still have a rebuttal card left, so you have 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Laurie, for that lead-in. The BC NDP formed government and had a lot to clean up. People had been ignored, services and supports had been ignored, and that had all happened so that the rich and well-connected could get tax breaks and could make more money. Services cost money. We're not denying that. That being said, the BC NDP managed to already get to work, already make a huge dent in the damage that was done by the BC Liberals. We've already done that work, and while doing it, we've been working on affordability. So I know that some people like to point out taxes or ideas for tax cuts that they know will help some, but affordability under the BC NDP is getting better and better, and we have so much more work to do. While we're moving together out of a pandemic, while we move into our economic recovery, while we keep each other safe and healthy, we do have to focus on our health, on supporting our seniors, on supporting those who are marginalized and who are most at risk. This requires an investment in services. And I don't think anyone on the panel tonight has actually denied that. That will cost money. One of the very, very critical pieces that I was considering when running was, am I running for my party or am I running for my community? And I do very much believe in the platform and the values of the BC NDP, and that is why I accepted that nomination. My investment is in Chilliwack-Kent, in ensuring that the people of Chilliwack-Kent have equal representation, have inclusive representation, and that nobody's voices are ignored. This is critical during a time where we all have to work together to move forward together. And I have all the faith that John Horgan and the BC NDP's plan to move us all forward together is the one that will work, and that my voice in Victoria can bring your priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And Jason, for your closing remarks, I believe you've been holding your cards, so you have 3 minutes. Is that correct?
2 minutes.
Or 2 minutes? Oh, sorry, you have 2 minutes.
I used
Yes.
one.
Yes, that's correct. 2 minutes.
Thanks, William.
Go ahead.
I'll take 3.
No.
Thank you very much to the Chamber. Thanks to CHC for the invitation tonight. These debates obviously look very different in the time of COVID and pandemic, but nonetheless incredibly important to be able to share our different views with the constituents here in Chilliwack-Kent. Again, I've been working on your behalf my whole public life, over 10 years here in Chilliwack-Kent, fighting for issues important to you. I believe the constituents, the voters here in Chilliwack-Kent want a change. They desire a change from the status quo. They're tired of the bitter partisanship that comes along with parties fighting in the legislature over different priorities. They're looking for somebody who will stand up on their behalf and hold whichever government forms, or whichever party forms government, accountable. Mr. Thronis mentioned that I may not be a team player. He obviously doesn't know me well. I pride myself on being able to work across party lines. Indeed, I am the only candidate here tonight who I believe can galvanize the cross-party support required to make a change in this riding. I'll say it again. The first day we started our campaign, I was endorsed by the Green candidate who stepped out of the race. I welcome any BC Liberal voters who are looking for a change to join with us and make history by electing the first independent MLA here in Chilliwack-Kent. I welcome NDP voters who are frustrated with the fact that we're even in this position in an election during a pandemic. My name is Jason Lum, and I am respectfully asking for your vote in this important election. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. And over to Eli. You have been holding your cards. You have 3. You have 3 minutes if you should choose to use it. It's yours.
Okay. Yeah. As I had mentioned before, I have not been in politics my entire life. I haven't been a huge political individual. I haven't even necessarily been doing it all that long. Things that I hear constantly all the time when we come to debates or discussions is people throwing out numbers, budgets, promises, conditions, improvements, all the time. All the time. You didn't hear any of that from me because I'm not here with a whole bunch of promises that I'm not going to keep. I'm not here to, razzle-dazzle you with a whole bunch of numbers and statistics. I'm just another everyday guy working that's not really happy with the way things are going. A lot of these parties have had their chance, so where are the results? We haven't really seen any. I haven't been happy. So they always say, if you think you can do it better, why don't you do it? That's why I'm here. So this is why I'm doing it, and hopefully we can make a difference.
You do have more time if you would like it, or you can.
Okay. Well,
sorry, I do just start the timer over every time.
So I do have a few more seconds here. So again, that's what I'm saying. Touching upon it, I'm definitely not a type of person that's going to be putting out buzzwords and everything to create this aura of a whole bunch of having all the answers right now. I don't have all the answers, but the one thing I want to do is find the answers. That's why I want to get in there and I want to get involved. I want to figure out what's going on, why it's not working out. So if I can get in there, then that's what I want to do, and figure it all out for the people, as opposed to just saying what I'm going to do or have these promises that I have that I may not necessarily be able to keep. And that's what I'm all about, and that's why I decided to jump on board and get involved.
Thank you, Eli. So there you have it, folks. That's the debate. Now you know a little bit more about your candidates. If you want more information, I'm urging you to please reach out to them and keep asking those hard questions. You've given me the chance to ask the hard questions tonight, and it's critical for our democracy that we keep doing that. So I want to thank you as an audience. You've been fantastic, some of the best audiences I've had. So thank you for that. Thank you for tuning in and watching the debate. And again, I want to thank For the Win Media, Robbie. Thank you so much for everything you've done. Kinetic Signs, Co-work, Tim. Thank you for everything, and also the Chamber of Commerce and the Chilliwack Healthier Communities. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you.